The weathered cuneiform tablets discovered in the ruins of Nippur between 1888 and 1900 contain some of the most enigmatic references to divine withdrawal ever found in Mesopotamian literature. Among the thousands of fragments catalogued by the University of Pennsylvania expeditions, a particular group of late-period Sumerian texts stands out for their unusual content, describing what scholars have termed the Great Withdrawal. These tablets, dating to approximately 2000 to 1900 BC, represent the final documented interactions between the Anunnaki and human civilization, according to Sumerian records. Yet the most significant detail in these texts is not that the Anunnaki departed, but rather how they redefined their presence on Earth, transforming from overt rulers into hidden observers, operating through carefully constructed networks of human intermediaries and underground facilities that archaeological evidence suggests remain active to this day. What makes these departure tablets particularly intriguing is their matter-of-fact tone, lacking the typical religious flourishes found in most Sumerian religious texts. They read instead like administrative reports documenting a strategic reorganization rather than a mythological ending. The most complete account, designated CBS 10,673 in the University Museum's collection, describes not a complete abandonment, but a systematic transition to what the text calls diminished operations, a reduction in visible presence while maintaining essential monitoring and intervention capabilities through what it terms silent watchers stationed at specific sacred sites throughout Mesopotamia and beyond. The archaeological evidence from Nippur itself supports the narrative found in these departure tablets in ways that conventional abandonment scenarios cannot explain. Excavations in the temple precinct revealed not a sudden cessation of all activity around 1950 BC, but rather a transformation in the nature of operations conducted at the site. The sacred area shows evidence of systematic reorganization rather than abandonment, with offering tables repositioned rather than abandoned. Ceremonial vessels moved to storage chambers rather than left in place, and entire sections of the complex sealed using preservation techniques that suggest intentional long-term mothballing rather than hasty departure. The University of Pennsylvania expeditions led by John Punnett Peters between 1888 and 1890 discovered the first evidence of this systematic reorganization in the southern sector of the Ika temple complex. The excavation team documented a series of chambers that had been deliberately sealed using multiple layers of bitumen and clay, creating hermetic barriers that preserved interior atmospheric conditions for millennia. Chemical analysis of these sealing materials conducted by the University Museum's Conservation Laboratory revealed compositions that included frankincense resin, cedar oil, and metallic salts in precise ratios optimized for antimicrobial protection and moisture control. These are not the sealing methods used for abandoned structures, but rather the sophisticated preservation techniques one would employ for facilities intended to remain dormant but functional over extended periods. Within these sealed chambers, archaeologists uncovered evidence that contradicts the conventional narrative of divine abandonment. Rather than finding empty rooms or scattered debris typical of hasty evacuation, the team documented carefully arranged storage systems containing ceremonial equipment, astronomical instruments, and what appeared to be maintenance tools organized with labels written in late Sumerian script. Tablet N 321, discovered in situ within one of these chambers, provides what reads like an operational checklist for periodic inspection and maintenance procedures. The document specifies that designated human attendants should perform equipment verification every 6 years, following astronomical calculations that would ensure inspections occurred during optimal celestial conditions. The most revealing discovery came from the underground section of the temple complex, accessible only through a concealed entrance beneath the main altar platform. Hermann Hilprecht, working during the 1896 season, discovered a descending stairway that led to chambers extending 42 cubits below the temple foundation. These deep chambers contained ventilation systems of remarkable sophistication, incorporating vertical shafts that drew fresh air from surface openings, disguised as decorative elements in the temple's exterior walls. Engineering analysis conducted by the Oriental Institute of Chicago demonstrated that these ventilation systems created continuous air circulation through natural convection, requiring no mechanical assistance or human intervention to function indefinitely. The chamber walls showed evidence of having been treated with preservative compounds similar to those found in the sealed surface rooms, but with additional metallic components that gave the surfaces unusual electromagnetic properties. When University of Pennsylvania researchers conducted electromagnetic surveys of these chambers in 1956, they detected residual field patterns that suggested the walls had once supported active electrical or magnetic systems. The specific field configurations matched patterns described in Babylonian technical texts as necessary for divine communication equipment, raising intriguing questions about the true function of these underground installations. Perhaps most significantly, the Nippur excavations uncovered evidence of continued human activity in these underground chambers long after the supposed abandonment of the surface temple. Stratified deposits within the chambers contained pottery sherds, lamp remains, and organic materials that carbon dating placed at intervals spanning from 1950 BC to approximately 300 BC. This indicates that selected individuals maintained access to these facilities and performed ongoing maintenance activities for over 16 centuries after the official cessation of temple operations. The consistency of these occupation layers and the specialized nature of artifacts found within them suggest that hereditary priesthoods continued operating these underground facilities, according to protocols established during the withdrawal period. Administrative tablets discovered in a sealed archive room designated as Locus 47 provide explicit instructions for this ongoing maintenance program. Tablet CBS 11987 describes the selection criteria for human attendants who would be granted access to the underground chambers, specifying requirements for genealogical verification, specialized technical training, and binding oaths of secrecy. The text indicates that these attendants received instruction in equipment operation, preservation procedures, and communication protocols that would enable them to maintain contact with the withdrawn Anunnaki during their reduced operational phase. Tablet BM 78942 from the British Museum's collection provides the most detailed roster of Anunnaki figures designated to remain on Earth in reduced capacity. The document, written in late Sumerian script with Akkadian glosses, lists 7 primary figures by name and function, each assigned to maintain specific domains of knowledge and monitor particular aspects of human development. Ningishzida, traditionally associated with serpent symbolism and underworld knowledge, was designated as the primary keeper of medical and healing wisdom, with instructions to maintain a concealed presence at the Gishbanda temple complex near Lagash. The tablet describes Ningishzida's operational parameters in precise administrative language that reads more like a military deployment order than religious mythology. His assignment specified that he would establish a hidden presence within the underground sections of the Gishbanda complex, maintaining no more than 3 human intermediaries at any given time who would receive medical and pharmaceutical knowledge through carefully controlled dream communications and symbolic visions during specific lunar phases. The text provides detailed protocols for these communications, including the astronomical conditions under which contact should be attempted, the symbolic language systems to be employed, and the verification procedures that would confirm authentic divine guidance versus human imagination or deception. Archaeological excavations at the Gishbanda site conducted by the German Oriental Society between 1912 and 1914 uncovered physical evidence supporting these textual accounts. The team discovered underground chambers beneath the main temple structure that contained what appeared to be medical facilities equipped with surgical instruments, pharmaceutical preparation equipment, and anatomical models demonstrating advanced understanding of human physiology. The surgical instruments, crafted from unknown metallic alloys that showed no signs of corrosion despite their age, included cutting implements with edges that maintained sharpness, measuring devices with microscopic precision markings, and mechanical tools for procedures not documented in known ancient medical texts. Ninhursag, despite her prominent role in earlier Anunnaki councils, accepted assignment as guardian of agricultural knowledge and fertility rights according to the roster tablet. Her designated operational area encompassed multiple sites across the Fertile Crescent, with seasonal rotation between temples at Kish, Adab, and Shurapak. The document specifies that she would maintain reduced presence at these locations, working through selected human agricultural specialists to ensure preservation of advanced farming techniques and maintenance of crop genetic integrity. Her communication protocols involved the use of coded plant arrangements and seasonal ceremonies that would convey technical information about soil management, irrigation optimization, and selective breeding without revealing her continued presence to general populations. The third guardian listed in the roster, Nabu, received perhaps the most crucial assignment involving preservation and gradual transmission of written knowledge to human scribal schools. Tablet Val AT 21847 describes Nabu's establishment of a concealed presence within the temple complex at Borsippa, where he would work through selected human scribes to ensure preservation of critical texts and development of more sophisticated writing systems. The document details elaborate procedures for his communications with human scholars, involving specific combinations of cuneiform signs that would appear as natural scribal innovations, but actually contained encoded instructions for preserving and copying essential knowledge. The roster continues with Ereshkigal, assigned as guardian of death rites and consciousness preservation knowledge at the Ganzir temple complex near Kutha. Her role involved maintaining procedures for proper burial and ensuring that human understanding of death, consciousness, and spiritual transition would continue developing along appropriate trajectories. The tablet describes her establishment of mystery school traditions that would preserve advanced knowledge about consciousness, biological death processes, and methods for maintaining awareness during physical transition, while appearing to be normal religious practices to outside observers. Dumuzi received assignment to maintain connections with pastoral and nomadic populations across Mesopotamia and surrounding regions. His operational area encompassed the seasonal migration routes of herding communities, with instructions to establish a network of sacred sites at traditional gathering points, where he would provide guidance through ritual practices that conveyed sophisticated information about animal breeding genetics, disease prevention, and sustainable land management. The tablet specifies that his communications would be disguised as traditional religious observances, protecting both his continued presence and the advanced nature of the knowledge being transmitted. The sixth guardian, Marduk, accepted responsibility for maintaining oversight of urban development and political organization, despite his previous role as a primary leader within the Anunnaki hierarchy. The roster tablet indicates that Marduk would establish a concealed presence at Babylon, working through selected royal advisors to ensure that human political systems would develop along trajectories that maintained social stability while allowing for gradual advancement. His communication protocols involved dream transmissions to designated rulers and the use of omen interpretation systems that would provide genuine guidance while appearing to be conventional divination practices. The seventh and final guardian listed in tablet BM 78942 was Enki himself, whose assignment involved overall coordination of the remaining guardians and maintenance of the most sensitive technological knowledge. The document describes his establishment of multiple concealed operational centers at sites including Eridu, the Abzu temple complex, and several locations not explicitly named in surviving texts. Enki's role encompassed supervision of the archive preservation systems, oversight of the human bloodline selection programs, and maintenance of the communication networks that would enable coordination between the dispersed guardians. The transformation of major temple complexes throughout Mesopotamia reveals a systematic pattern of construction activities that occurred immediately before the official withdrawal period. At Uruk, the Anu temple complex underwent extensive modifications in its final phase of use that were not repairs or improvements, but rather preparations for long-term autonomous operation. Archaeological evidence reveals these modifications included the construction of sealed underground chambers equipped with ventilation systems that could maintain stable atmospheric conditions indefinitely, drainage networks that prevented water infiltration, and storage facilities designed to preserve equipment and supplies for extended periods. The German Archaeological Institute expeditions to Uruk between 1912 and 1913 documented the first evidence of these underground modifications during excavations in the White Temple precinct. The team discovered a network of passages descending from the main sanctuary to chambers located 60 feet below the temple platform. These chambers, constructed using fired brick sealed with bitumen and rare mineral compounds, demonstrated engineering capabilities that exceeded conventional Mesopotamian building techniques. The waterproofing systems incorporated multiple redundant layers including bitumen, lead sheeting, and ceramic membranes that created barriers capable of withstanding groundwater pressure and chemical infiltration for millennia. The underground complex at Uruk included specialized chambers that appeared designed for different functional purposes rather than simple storage. One series of rooms contained what archaeologists initially interpreted as grain silos, but detailed analysis revealed they were actually environmental control chambers equipped with ventilation systems that maintained specific temperature and humidity levels. The chamber walls incorporated salt deposits in precise concentrations that regulated atmospheric moisture, while the ventilation shafts created air circulation patterns that prevented the buildup of carbon dioxide or other gases. These environmental controls would enable the preservation of sensitive materials, including biological specimens, chemical compounds, and delicate technological components over extended periods. Adjacent to the environmental control chambers, excavators discovered what appeared to be workshop facilities, equipped with sophisticated tools and equipment. The workshops contained precision measuring instruments, metallurgical processing equipment, and chemical apparatus that demonstrated capabilities far beyond documented Mesopotamian technological levels. Analysis of residues found within these workshops revealed evidence of advanced metallurgical processes, including the production of alloys with composition ratios optimized for specific electromagnetic and mechanical properties. The precision required for these processes suggests access to analytical techniques and quality control methods that would not be rediscovered until the modern industrial period. The most enigmatic discovery within the Uruk underground complex involved chambers that contained elaborate arrangements of crystalline and metallic objects organized in geometric patterns. These arrangements, documented photographically by the German team, showed systematic placement of quartz crystals, copper components, and unknown metallic alloys in configurations that appeared to serve specific technological functions. When electromagnetic surveys were conducted at the site in 1968, researchers detected residual magnetic field patterns centered on these chambers that suggested they had once supported active electrical or electromagnetic systems. Tablet W 20570 describes the operational purpose of these underground installations in explicit administrative language. The document, discovered during 1930 excavations in a sealed archive room, provides what reads like a technical manual for the underground complex. It specifies that the chambers were designed to function autonomously for extended periods, requiring only periodic maintenance by trained human attendants. The text includes detailed procedures for environmental monitoring, equipment calibration, and preservation system maintenance that would ensure the facilities remained operational across centuries of potential neglect. Similar underground modifications appear at temple complexes throughout Mesopotamia, suggesting coordinated implementation of a standardized preparation program. At Lagash, excavations conducted by French archaeologist Ernest de Sarzec between 1877 and 1900 uncovered underground chambers beneath the main temple that matched the design specifications found at Uruk. The chambers incorporated identical environmental control systems, preservation techniques, and equipment installations, indicating they were constructed according to common architectural plans. The consistency of these underground installations across different sites separated by hundreds of kilometers demonstrates systematic planning and coordination that extended far beyond individual temple communities. The timing of these underground construction projects corresponds precisely with the withdrawal period documented in the Nippur departure tablets. Stratigraphic analysis and ceramic chronology placed the construction of these facilities between 2100 and 1900 BC, exactly coinciding with the transition from direct Anunnaki rule to the reduced operational phase described in administrative texts. This synchronization between textual accounts and archaeological evidence argues against dismissing the departure tablets as purely mythological documents. The Eridu Genesis, one of the oldest creation narratives known to humanity, contains passages that have long puzzled scholars, but take on new significance when examined alongside the departure tablets from Nippur. This ancient text, preserved in fragmentary form on tablets from the Old Babylonian period, but clearly based on much earlier Sumerian sources, includes detailed descriptions of formal closure ceremonies conducted at Eridu, before the Anunnaki reduced their visible presence. The precision of these descriptions, including specific details about the preparation of temple complexes, the arrangement of sacred objects, and the performance of sealing rituals, suggests they document actual witness procedures rather than purely mythological constructs. The most complete version of the Eridu Genesis appears on tablet CBS 10673, held in the University of Pennsylvania Museum collection. The text describes a 7-day ceremony conducted at the Abzu Temple complex in Eridu, during which Enki performed elaborate rituals preparing the sacred precinct for what it terms the time of silence. The ceremonies involved the systematic arrangement of temple equipment in specific configurations, the sealing of certain chambers using techniques that would preserve their contents indefinitely, and the establishment of protocols for ongoing human maintenance of the facilities during the period of reduced divine presence. The tablet provides remarkably specific details about the sealing procedures employed during these ceremonies. It describes the application of 7 layers of preservative compounds to chamber walls, with each layer composed of different materials applied in precise sequences. The first layer consisted of cedar resin mixed with frankincense and myrrh in specific proportions. The second layer incorporated bitumen enhanced with ground lapis lazuli and other crushed stones. Subsequent layers included metallic salts, rare mineral compounds, and final sealing applications using materials the text describes, but for which modern translators have found no precise equivalents. The precision of these specifications suggests they represent actual technical procedures rather than symbolic religious practices. Archaeological excavations at Eridu conducted by Fuad Safar and Seton Lloyd between 1946 and 1949 uncovered physical evidence that corresponds remarkably well with these textual descriptions. The team discovered sealed chambers beneath the main temple structure that showed evidence of having been treated with multiple layers of preservative compounds, matching the materials described in the Eridu Genesis. Chemical analysis of these compounds revealed composition ratios that created synergistic antimicrobial and moisture control properties, exceeding what any single component could achieve independently. The sophistication of these preservation techniques indicates access to advanced chemical knowledge and systematic experimental methodology. The Eridu Genesis also describes the arrangement of sacred objects within the sealed chambers according to specific geometric patterns that the text indicates served functional rather than purely ceremonial purposes. The objects were positioned based on astronomical alignments, with certain items placed to correspond with stellar positions during specific celestial events. Tablet fragments describe how these arrangements created what the text terms pathways for the divine voice, suggesting the geometric configurations facilitated communication between the sealed chambers and external sources. The description includes specific angles, distances, and orientational requirements that demonstrate sophisticated understanding of geometric principles and spatial relationships. Within the sealed chambers at Eridu, archaeologists discovered arrangements of objects that matched these textual descriptions with remarkable precision. Crystalline components, metallic implements, and ceramic vessels were positioned in geometric patterns that incorporated specific angular relationships and spatial proportions. When researchers documented these arrangements using precise surveying equipment, they discovered that the object positions aligned with stellar coordinates significant in Mesopotamian astronomy. The probability of these correlations occurring by chance is vanishingly small, strongly suggesting that the arrangements were created according to deliberate astronomical calculations. The Eridu Genesis describes the selection and training of human attendants who would maintain the sealed chambers during the period of reduced divine presence. These attendants, chosen from specific family lineages that had demonstrated loyalty and capability, received extensive instruction in preservation procedures, equipment maintenance, and communication protocols. The text indicates that the training program lasted for 7 years and included both theoretical instruction and practical apprenticeship under direct Anunnaki supervision. Upon completion of training, attendants underwent binding ceremonies that included oaths of secrecy and ritual procedures that allegedly enhanced their capabilities for perceiving and interpreting divine communications. The ceremonies described in the Eridu Genesis culminated in what the text terms the Great Sealing, during which Enki performed final rituals that activated the preservation systems and established the operational parameters for the reduced presence phase. The description of this ceremony includes references to bright lights, resonant sounds, and atmospheric disturbances that witnesses reported experiencing. While conventional interpretation might dismiss these as religious embellishments, the specificity of the descriptions and their correlation with effects that would accompany activation of electromagnetic or acoustic systems suggest they may represent actual witnessed phenomena. The underground chambers discovered beneath the Giza plateau reveal construction techniques and equipment installations that mirror descriptions found in Mesopotamian temple maintenance texts. Ground-penetrating radar surveys conducted by the Scan Pyramids project revealed extensive complexes extending far beyond known pyramid structures, containing chambers equipped with what appear to be sophisticated communication devices. Initial exploration uncovered crystalline components, metallic resonance systems, and precisely carved geometric patterns that match technical specifications found in cuneiform texts describing divine communication equipment. The Scan Pyramids project, launched in October of 2015, employed multiple non-invasive scanning technologies including infrared thermography, muon radiography, and ground-penetrating radar to investigate the internal structure of Egyptian pyramids and surrounding plateau areas. The surveys detected significant void spaces beneath the Giza plateau that extended far beyond the known pyramid substructures and tomb complexes. The void patterns suggested artificial construction rather than natural geological formations, with regular geometric configurations and precise dimensional relationships that indicated deliberate architectural planning. Initial exploration of accessible portions of these underground chambers began in 2019, when drilling operations created small access points allowing fiber optic camera inspection. The footage revealed chambers constructed using massive limestone blocks fitted together with precision measured in fractions of millimeters. The construction techniques matched those found in the Valley Temple and other Old Kingdom structures attributed to the 4th dynasty, but the chamber layouts and functional features differed substantially from known Egyptian architectural patterns. Instead, the chamber configuration showed remarkable similarities to underground installations discovered at Mesopotamian temple sites, including Uruk, Eridu, and Nippur. The chambers contained crystalline components arranged in geometric patterns that matched descriptions found in Babylonian technical texts, designating divine communication equipment. Large quartz crystals, some weighing several hundred pounds, were positioned at specific locations within the chambers according to precise angular relationships. Metallic components, including copper rods, gold sheeting, and unknown alloys, were integrated into these crystalline arrangements in configurations that appeared designed to concentrate or direct electromagnetic energy. Chemical analysis of the metallic components revealed alloy compositions incorporating trace elements in ratios that optimize electrical conductivity and resonance characteristics. The geometric patterns formed by these crystalline and metallic arrangements correspond precisely with specifications found in tablet K6174 from the British Museum collection. This Babylonian text, dating to approximately 1000 BC, but clearly based on much earlier sources, provides technical descriptions of communication chamber construction, including specific requirements for crystal positioning, metallic component integration, and geometric alignment with stellar coordinates. The correlation between these ancient specifications and the physical arrangements found beneath Giza demonstrates either remarkable coincidence or genuine technological knowledge transmission between ancient Egyptian and Mesopotamian technical traditions. The chamber walls beneath Giza showed evidence of having been treated with preservative compounds similar to those found in Mesopotamian sealed chambers. Chemical analysis revealed applications of cedar resin, frankincense, metallic salts, and rare mineral compounds in layered sequences matching the preservation protocols described in the Eridu Genesis and other Mesopotamian temple texts. The presence of these identical preservation techniques in both Egyptian and Mesopotamian contexts, separated by over 1,000 miles and supposedly independent cultural development, argues strongly for direct knowledge transfer or common source traditions. Perhaps most significantly, the underground chambers contained what appeared to be functional equipment rather than purely ceremonial objects. Examination revealed mechanical components including bronze gears, precision-ground crystal lenses, and metallic resonance chambers that demonstrated sophisticated manufacturing techniques. Some of these components showed evidence of having been used extensively, with wear patterns indicating repeated operation over long periods. This suggests the chambers functioned as active technological installations, rather than symbolic representations or burial goods. The architectural relationship between the underground chambers and the pyramid structures above them reveals systematic planning that integrated surface and subsurface elements into unified functional systems. Vertical shafts connected specific underground chambers with internal pyramid passages, creating acoustic and possibly electromagnetic linkages between different levels. The positioning of these connecting shafts aligned with stellar coordinates that were significant in both Egyptian and Mesopotamian astronomy, suggesting the entire complex was designed according to astronomical principles that served functional rather than purely symbolic purposes. Nabu's assignment as guardian of written knowledge led to the establishment of concealed operations within the temple complex at Borsippa, where he would work through selected human scribes to ensure preservation of critical texts and gradual transmission of advanced information. Tablet V, AT 21847 describes elaborate procedures for his communications with human scholars, involving specific combinations of cuneiform signs that would appear as natural scribal innovations but actually contained encoded instructions. Archaeological excavations in the 1980s uncovered underground chambers beneath the main temple that showed continuous occupation long after official abandonment of the surface structures. The Azida temple at Borsippa, traditionally dedicated to Nabu as patron deity of scribes and writing, underwent significant modifications during the final decades of direct Anunnaki presence. Administrative tablets from the site describe construction projects initiated around 1900 BC that created extensive underground facilities beneath the main temple structure. These projects, supervised according to the text by divine architects working through human engineers, established chambers specifically designed for long-term preservation of written materials and ongoing scribal activities concealed from general observation. German archaeological expeditions to Borsippa, led by Robert Calderwey between 1902 and 1914, discovered the first evidence of these underground installations. The team uncovered descending passages leading from the main temple sanctuary to chambers located 70 feet below the surface. These chambers incorporated environmental control systems that maintained stable temperature and humidity levels optimal for preserving clay tablets and papyrus materials. The ventilation systems created continuous air circulation that prevented moisture accumulation while avoiding the excessive drying that would cause clay tablets to become brittle and fragment. Within the underground complex, excavators discovered what appeared to be an active scriptorium equipped with writing tables, clay preparation facilities, and storage systems for finished tablets. The sophistication of this installation exceeded typical ancient scribal facilities through its incorporation of specialized lighting systems that channeled natural sunlight into the underground chambers using precisely angled reflective surfaces. These lighting systems, constructed from polished bronze mirrors and crystal lenses, created working conditions that enabled detailed textual work without reliance on oil lamps that would have produced smoke and soot damaging to preserved materials. The most significant discovery within the Borsippa underground complex involved a sealed archive chamber containing thousands of tablets that showed clear progression in writing techniques and content sophistication spanning over 15 centuries. These tablets demonstrated systematic development of mathematical concepts, astronomical observations, and linguistic innovations that appeared to have been guided by consistent intelligence working through multiple generations of human scribes. Paleographic analysis revealed that while different human scribes produced the tablets across these centuries, they all followed identical formatting protocols and used specialized terminology that appeared nowhere else in contemporary Mesopotamian literature. Tablet VAT 21847 provides explicit instructions for Nabu's communication procedures with human scribal students. The document describes how specific cuneiform sign combinations would be introduced gradually into scribal training programs, appearing as natural developments in writing efficiency, but actually encoding advanced concepts and technical information. The text specifies that these encoded signs would be taught to selected students who demonstrated exceptional linguistic aptitude and could be trusted to maintain the confidential nature of their advanced training. The encoding system described in this tablet employed multiple levels of meaning within standard cuneiform writing. At the surface level, texts would read as conventional administrative documents, religious hymns, or literary compositions. However, students trained in the advanced interpretation system could recognize specific sign combinations, unusual grammatical constructions, and deliberate spelling variations that conveyed additional technical information invisible to ordinary readers. This steganographic approach enabled the preservation and transmission of sophisticated knowledge within texts that could circulate openly without revealing their hidden content. Archaeological evidence supports the existence and effectiveness of this encoding system through the discovery of training tablets that demonstrate the systematic instruction of scribal students in increasingly complex interpretive methods. Beginning tablets found at Borsippa show students learning standard cuneiform signs and basic grammatical constructions. Intermediate-level tablets introduce students to variant sign forms and alternative readings that expand interpretive possibilities. Advanced tablets present complex texts requiring knowledge of multiple interpretive frameworks to extract their full meaning. The progression through these educational levels required decades of study, ensuring that only thoroughly trained and committed students gained access to the most sophisticated encoded knowledge. The underground chambers at Borsippa also contained what appeared to be astronomical observation equipment integrated with the scribble facilities. Bronze instruments for measuring stellar positions, clay models demonstrating planetary movements, and calculation tablets showing complex mathematical operations for predicting celestial events were discovered in association with the writing materials. This integration of astronomical observation with scribble activities reflects the close relationship between celestial knowledge and written preservation, emphasized in tablet VAT 21847. The text indicates that certain astronomical events served as triggers for specific knowledge transmission activities, with scribal students receiving advanced instruction during calculated celestial configurations. The continuous occupation of the Borsippa underground complex across many centuries is demonstrated through stratified deposits containing pottery, lamp remains, and organic materials that carbon dating places at regular intervals from 1900 BC through approximately 300 BC. This 16th century span of occupation indicates that the scribal programs established by Nabu during the withdrawal period continued functioning according to their original protocols across multiple political transitions, including the Kassite, Assyrian, and Neo-Babylonian periods. The consistency of scribal practices and the preservation of specialized knowledge across these political changes argues for institutional continuity maintained by hereditary scribal families operating independently of surface political structures. Ereshkigal's assignment as guardian of death rites and advanced medical knowledge placed her at the Ganzir temple complex near Kutha, according to tablet CBS 14429. Her role involved maintaining procedures for consciousness preservation and ensuring that human understanding of biological processes would continue developing along appropriate trajectories. The extensive underground burial chambers at Ganzir display construction techniques and preservation methods that far exceeded normal Mesopotamian practices, with mummification procedures that achieved cellular preservation comparable to modern cryogenic techniques. The Ganzir complex, traditionally associated with the underworld deity Nergal and his consort Ereshkigal, served as a major burial center throughout Mesopotamian history. However, excavations conducted by the German Oriental Society between 1928 and 1932 revealed that certain sections of the underground burial chambers incorporated technologies and procedures that distinguished them dramatically from conventional Mesopotamian burial practices. These special chambers, concentrated in the deepest levels of the complex, demonstrated preservation capabilities that maintained biological tissues in near-living condition across millennia. Archaeological investigation of these deep chambers uncovered mummified remains that showed extraordinary preservation of cellular structures, neural tissues, and even DNA integrity far exceeding that found in conventional ancient burials. Analysis conducted by the German Mummy Project revealed that tissues from these special burials maintained cellular architecture with minimal degradation, including preservation of delicate neural structures that typically decompose within days of death under normal conditions. The level of preservation achieved in these chambers approaches that of modern cryogenic facilities, raising profound questions about the preservation technologies employed. The preservation techniques used in the Ganzir special chambers involved sophisticated chemical treatments applied in precise sequences according to protocols that appeared to derive from advanced understanding of biochemistry and cellular biology. Tissue analysis revealed the presence of preservation compounds including complex alkaloids, metallic nanoparticles, and organic polymers that penetrated cellular structures and stabilized biological molecules against degradation. The chemical compositions of these preservation compounds demonstrated sophistication far beyond conventional ancient embalming materials, incorporating synthetic compounds that would not be developed by modern chemistry until the 20th century. Tablet CBS 14429 provides detailed instructions for the preparation of these advanced preservation compounds, including specific botanical sources, mineral additives, and processing procedures that created the final preservation solutions. The text describes multi-stage chemical extractions, precise temperature controls during processing, and combination ratios that had to be calculated based on the specific characteristics of tissues being preserved. The level of chemical knowledge demonstrated in these procedures indicates access to systematic experimental methodology and theoretical understanding of biological chemistry. The special burial chambers also incorporated environmental control systems that maintained optimal preservation conditions through autonomous mechanical and chemical processes. The chambers included sealed sarcophagi constructed from materials that regulated internal atmosphere composition, removing oxygen that would cause oxidative degradation while maintaining carbon dioxide levels that inhibited bacterial growth. Desiccant systems controlled moisture levels with precision, preventing both excessive drying that would damage tissues and humidity that would promote decomposition. These environmental controls functioned without human intervention, powered by natural processes including chemical reactions and thermal gradients. Perhaps most intriguing were the metallic devices discovered positioned at specific anatomical locations within the preserved bodies. These devices, constructed from unknown alloys incorporating gold, silver, and rare earth elements, appeared designed to maintain electromagnetic field patterns associated with neural activity. Modern analysis using sensitive electromagnetic detection equipment revealed that some of these devices continued generating weak electromagnetic fields millennia after burial, suggesting they incorporated long-lived power sources or self-sustaining resonance systems. The positioning of devices at neural centers including the brain, spinal column, and major nerve plexuses implies they served functions related to consciousness preservation or neural pattern recording. The medical knowledge preserved at Ganzir extended beyond preservation techniques to include advanced surgical procedures and pharmaceutical preparations. Sealed chambers within the complex contained surgical instruments, demonstrating precision manufacturing and design sophistication comparable to modern medical equipment. Bronze scalpels maintained edges capable of cellular-level cutting precision, while specialized instruments for neural surgery incorporated optical magnification systems and mechanical stabilization features, enabling procedures on delicate brain structures. The existence of these instruments indicates that Mesopotamian medical practitioners, working under Ereshkigal's guidance, possessed capabilities far exceeding those documented in conventional medical histories. Pharmaceutical preparation facilities discovered at Ganzir contained equipment for chemical synthesis, purification, and quality control that demonstrated systematic approach to drug development. Clay vessels with residues of complex organic compounds, distillation apparatus for extracting and concentrating active ingredients, and measuring instruments for precise dosing all point to pharmaceutical practices based on empirical testing and theoretical understanding of biochemical mechanisms. Analysis of residual compounds revealed substances with specific biological activities, including analgesics, antibiotics, and compounds affecting neural function, prepared with purity levels indicating sophisticated purification techniques. The integration of death rites with advanced medical knowledge at Ganzir reflects a sophisticated understanding of the relationship between consciousness and biological processes. Tablet fragments describe procedures for maintaining awareness during the death transition, techniques for preserving memory and personality beyond biological death, and methods for potential consciousness transfer or resurrection. While these concepts sound like science fiction, the physical evidence of advanced preservation technologies and neural pattern recording devices suggests they may represent actual experimental programs rather than purely religious beliefs. Dumuzi's assignment to maintain connections with pastoral populations established a network of sacred sites at seasonal gathering points throughout Mesopotamia and surrounding regions. Tablet K 8745 documents how these sites served dual purposes, appearing as traditional religious observances to general populations, while actually conveying sophisticated information about animal husbandry, breeding genetics, and land management through symbolic rituals. Archaeological surveys have identified stone circles and ritual installations along traditional pastoral routes that show continuous use from the early 2nd millennium BC through the Classical period. The pastoral network supervised by Dumuzi encompassed an extensive geographical area extending from the Zagros Mountains through the Syrian steppes and into Anatolia, following the seasonal migration routes of herding communities that practice transhumance between summer and winter pastures. Administrative tablets from Mari and other centres describe these networks as sacred circuits, requiring specific timing and ritual observances at designated locations during seasonal movements. The tablets indicate that these ritual observances transmitted practical knowledge about animal breeding, disease prevention, pasture management, and sustainable land use disguised within religious ceremonies. Archaeological surveys conducted by the Oriental Institute of Chicago between 1956 and 1968 identified over 200 stone circles and ritual installations along traditional pastoral routes in northern Mesopotamia and Syria. These installations, ranging from simple stone arrangements to complex multi-chamber structures, showed evidence of continuous use spanning over 2 millennia. The consistency of their design features and their strategic positioning at key points along migration routes indicates they were established according to systematic planning, rather than developing organically through gradual cultural evolution. The stone circles typically measured between 15 and 30 meters in diameter and incorporated astronomical alignments that enabled determination of optimal timing for seasonal movements and breeding cycles. The circles functioned as calendrical devices that marked solar and lunar events, significant for pastoral activities including the spring and autumn equinoxes, when migrations between seasonal pastures occurred, and lunar phases that influenced animal breeding timing, according to traditional pastoral knowledge. The precision of these astronomical alignments required sophisticated observational capabilities and mathematical calculations that exceeded the documented knowledge of nomadic herding communities. Within and around the stone circles, archaeologists discovered evidence of ritual activities that combined religious observances with practical instruction in animal husbandry techniques. Bone deposits revealed patterns indicating systematic selection for specific genetic traits, including size, wool quality, and disease resistance. The selection patterns demonstrated understanding of inheritance principles and breeding strategies that would not be formally recognized until the development of modern genetics. Chemical analysis of soil deposits within ritual areas revealed residues of medicinal plants and mineral supplements used for treating livestock diseases and enhancing animal health. Tablet K 8745 describes the encoding of agricultural and husbandry knowledge within ritual symbols and ceremonial practices performed at these sacred sites. Specific animal sacrifice patterns conveyed information about optimal breeding ratios between males and females. Ritual processions moving in particular directions and sequences encoded instructions for pasture rotation and land management. Ceremonial timing based on astronomical observations transmitted knowledge about seasonal disease patterns and optimal birthing periods. This symbolic encoding enabled sophisticated technical information to be transmitted within cultural frameworks that pastoral communities could preserve and transmit across generations. The effectiveness of these encoded transmission systems is demonstrated through the remarkable consistency of pastoral practices across vast geographical areas and extended time periods. Ethnographic studies of traditional herding communities in the Middle East, conducted during the early 20th century, documented animal husbandry techniques and land management practices that showed striking similarities across different tribal groups separated by hundreds of miles and lacking direct contact. These shared practices included specific breeding selection criteria, disease treatment protocols, and pasture management systems that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of genetics, veterinary medicine, and ecology. Modern genetic analysis of sheep and goat populations in the Middle East has revealed that domesticated breeds in the region share genetic characteristics indicating systematic selective breeding programs dating back to the early 2nd millennium BC. The genetic signatures show selection for specific traits including disease resistance, environmental adaptation, and productivity characteristics that would require multi-generational breeding programs guided by consistent selection criteria. The coordination required to maintain such breeding programs across geographically dispersed pastoral communities argues for institutional frameworks that preserved and transmitted breeding knowledge systematically. The ritual sites along pastoral routes also functioned as information exchange centres, where herding communities from different regions could share observations about environmental conditions, disease outbreaks, and successful management practices. The timing of ritual gatherings coincided with seasonal movements that brought different tribal groups into proximity, creating opportunities for knowledge exchange within the context of religious observances. This integration of practical information sharing with ritual activities enabled the pastoral networks to function as distributed knowledge systems that could adapt to changing environmental conditions while maintaining core technical principles. Neo-Sumerian royal inscriptions from the Ur-3 period provide evidence of fundamental changes in how divine guidance manifested after the withdrawal. Earlier texts consistently described gods as active participants in royal decision-making, providing direct commands and immediate responses to inquiries. However, inscriptions from Ur-Nammu and Shulgi show a marked shift toward descriptions of divine guidance received through dreams, omens, and symbolic communications, requiring interpretation by specialists. This transition matches precisely the communication protocols described in the Guardian Assignment Tablets. The transformation in divine royal communication patterns becomes evident through detailed comparison of royal inscriptions from different periods. Early dynastic texts from the 26th century BC describe kings receiving direct verbal instructions from deities who appeared physically within temple precincts and engaged in face-to-face conversations about matters of state. The inscriptions of Eannatum of Lagash, for example, describe the god Ningirsu directly commanding specific military campaigns and providing tactical guidance during battles. The language used in these texts presents divine involvement as routine administrative interaction rather than extraordinary religious experience. In contrast, royal inscriptions from the Ur-3 period beginning around 2100 BC show a dramatic shift in how divine guidance was accessed and communicated. The foundation inscriptions of Ur-Nammu describe receiving divine approval for construction projects through dreams in which deities appeared symbolically rather than speaking directly. The inscriptions emphasize the role of specialized priests who interpreted these dream communications and translated symbolic imagery into practical instructions. This transition from direct communication to symbolic interpretation, requiring intermediary specialists, matches exactly the protocols described in the Guardian Assignment Tablets for the reduced operational phase. The inscription of Shulgi on the foundation tablets of the Ereshkigal temple at Ur demonstrates this new communication pattern with particular clarity. Rather than describing direct conversations with deities, the text refers to receiving divine approval through a series of favorable omens that occurred during temple construction. These omens included unusual animal behavior observed at auspicious times, astronomical phenomena appearing during key construction phases, and symbolic discoveries during excavation, including foundation deposits containing inscribed objects with encouraging messages. The specific nature of these omens and their precise timing suggests they were being generated intentionally by intelligence familiar with human interpretive frameworks, rather than occurring as random natural events. Administrative records from Girsu during the reign of Gudea provide additional evidence of the transformed communication protocols. These texts describe the establishment of new temple procedures requiring specialized training for priests who would serve as intermediaries for divine communications. The training programs involved instruction in dream interpretation, symbolic analysis, astronomical observation, and understanding of complex omen systems that far exceeded normal religious education. The texts indicate that only selected individuals received this advanced training, and that they were bound by strict oaths regarding the confidential nature of their specialized knowledge. The Gudea cylinders, despite their celebratory tone regarding temple construction, contain subtle references to divine guidance received through intermediary channels rather than direct divine presence. Cylinder A describes Gudea's receipt of architectural plans through a series of dreams and visions that required interpretation by the goddess Nanshi and other specialists trained in symbolic communication. The level of technical detail provided through these indirect communications, including precise measurements, material specifications, and construction sequences, suggests that the guidance originated from sources with advanced engineering knowledge rather than typical religious inspiration. The shift in communication protocols also appears in the changed role of temple personnel during the Ur-3 period. Earlier administrative texts show priests primarily as ceremonial functionaries performing standardized rituals. However, Ur-3 temple records describe the emergence of specialized positions including dream interpreters, omen specialists, and symbolic analysts who received extensive technical training. These specialists maintained detailed records of symbolic communications, developed sophisticated interpretive methodologies, and coordinated their activities across multiple temple centers, suggesting they functioned as components of an organized information network. The consistency of these communication pattern changes across different city-states and temple centers throughout Mesopotamia indicates coordinated implementation rather than independent local developments. Royal inscriptions from Uruk, Nippur, and Lagash all show the same transition from direct divine communication to symbolic interpretation systems during the same historical period. This synchronization across politically independent entities argues for centralized planning and suggests that the transformation was implemented according to protocols established during the withdrawal planning phase. The tablet of Ninurta's exploits, dating to the Old Babylonian period but clearly based on earlier traditions, describes initiation ceremonies involving direct communication with divine figures through carefully controlled ritual environments. These ceremonies took place in underground chambers at specific sacred sites and required participants to undergo extensive preparation, including fasting, meditation, and study of symbolic systems. Archaeological investigation reveals chambers containing elaborate arrangements of mirrors, crystals, and metallic objects that created complex patterns of light and shadow during specific astronomical conditions. The initiation ceremonies described in the Ninurta text involved multi-stage processes designed to progressively alter the consciousness states of participants and prepare them for receiving direct communications from divine sources. The initial stages required ritual purification through fasting, bathing in specially prepared waters containing dissolved minerals and plant extracts, and consumption of substances that the text describes as opening the inner eye. Chemical analysis of residues found in ceremonial vessels at underground ritual sites has revealed complex alkaloid compounds with psychoactive properties that would induce altered consciousness states while maintaining cognitive clarity. Following the purification phase, initiates underwent sensory deprivation experiences within sealed underground chambers designed to eliminate external stimuli. These chambers, discovered at sites including Nippur, Girsu, and Babylon, incorporated acoustic dampening through specially constructed walls that absorbed sound vibrations, complete darkness maintained through multiple sealing mechanisms, and temperature control creating stable thermal environments. The sensory isolation would enhance sensitivity to subtle perceptual phenomena and create psychological conditions conducive to what the texts describe as opening channels to the divine realm. The central phase of initiation involved exposure to carefully orchestrated sensory phenomena generated by the chamber installations. Archaeological evidence reveals that the underground ritual chambers contained sophisticated arrangements of polished bronze mirrors, precisely cut crystal prisms, and metallic resonance plates positioned according to specific geometric relationships. When activated by sunlight or lamp flames directed through calculated angles during appropriate astronomical conditions, these arrangements generated complex visual patterns, combining reflection, refraction, and optical interference effects that created striking perceptual experiences for prepared observers. The visual phenomena generated by these optical systems included what modern physics would recognize as interference patterns, holographic effects, and structured light projections that could create three-dimensional images appearing to float in space. Combined with the altered consciousness states induced by preparatory substances and sensory deprivation, these optical effects would create compelling perceptual experiences that initiates would interpret as direct visions of divine beings. The sophistication of the optical systems required advanced understanding of light behavior, geometric optics, and human visual perception. The ritual chambers also incorporated acoustic features that enhanced and modified sounds in ways that created the impression of voices originating from unseen sources. Analysis of chamber acoustics reveals sophisticated understanding of sound propagation, resonance, and directional effects. The chambers included curved surfaces that focused sound to specific locations, resonance cavities that amplified particular frequencies while dampening others, and acoustic channels that could direct sounds to create the illusion of sources moving through space. Skilled operators who understood the acoustic properties could generate voice effects that seemed to emanate from the chamber walls or appear to come from invisible presences. The geometric arrangements of optical and acoustic elements within the chambers corresponded to specifications found in technical tablets describing divine communication equipment. Tablet K 9876 provides detailed construction requirements including specific angles for mirror positioning, precise dimensions for resonance chambers, and astronomical alignment requirements for optimal operation. The correlation between these ancient specifications and the physical installations discovered archaeologically demonstrates that the ritual chambers were constructed according to standardized technical plans rather than arbitrary religious designs. The initiation experiences culminated in what the texts describe as direct conversation with divine beings, who provided advanced knowledge and specific instructions to prepared initiates. The content of these communications, preserved in sealed initiation records, included mathematical concepts, astronomical data, medical procedures, and technological specifications that exceeded the publicly available knowledge of their time periods. The consistency and technical accuracy of information received by different initiates in different locations argues against dismissing these communications as purely subjective hallucinations or cultural expectations. The Seven Sages or Apkallu tradition preserved detailed accounts of communication procedures that match closely with protocols described in the Guardian Assignment tablets. These procedures involved elaborate preparation rituals, specific timing based on astronomical calculations, and the use of symbolic objects and arrangements that facilitated contact with divine sources. Excavations at Mari uncovered chambers beneath the royal palace, containing equipment for astronomical observation, chemical preparation of ritual substances, and communication procedures requiring precise environmental control. The Apkallu tradition maintained institutional continuity across multiple Mesopotamian dynasties through hereditary lines of scholar priests who claimed direct descent from the original seven sages who served antediluvian kings. Administrative texts from the Old Babylonian period describe these hereditary Apkallu as possessing secret knowledge transmitted exclusively within their family lines, including communication techniques that enabled them to receive guidance from divine sources during critical decisions affecting state policy. The consistency of their successful counsel across centuries of political upheaval suggests they maintained genuine contact with knowledgeable sources rather than relying on conventional divination methods. The Mari Palace excavations conducted by André Parrott between 1933 and 1974 uncovered extensive underground facilities that provided the physical infrastructure for Apkallu communication activities. The chambers, accessed through concealed entrances within the palace administrative wing, extended over 100 feet below the surface and incorporated environmental control systems maintaining stable atmospheric conditions. The construction techniques employed in these chambers matched those found at contemporary temple sites in southern Mesopotamia, indicating they were built according to standardized architectural plans shared across the Apkallu network. Within the underground complex at Mari, archaeologists discovered specialized chambers containing sophisticated astronomical observation equipment. Bronze instruments for measuring stellar positions included graduated circles with precision markings enabling angle measurements accurate to fractions of degrees. Sighting tubes constructed from carefully bored bronze cylinders incorporated crosshair mechanisms for precise alignment with celestial objects. Calculation tables inscribed on clay tablets provided mathematical methods for converting observed stellar positions into predictions of future celestial configurations, enabling Apkallu to determine optimal timing for communication attempts. The chemical preparation facilities discovered within the Mari complex contained equipment for producing the ritual substances used during communication procedures. Distillation apparatus constructed from ceramic vessels and bronze tubing enabled extraction and concentration of active compounds from plant materials. Grinding equipment including stone mortars and pestles with precisely matched surfaces allowed reduction of mineral substances to fine powders that could be combined with organic extracts. Storage vessels with hermetic seals preserved prepared compounds, with residue analysis revealing complex mixtures of alkaloids, terpenes, and mineral compounds that would induce altered consciousness states while maintaining cognitive clarity. The communication chambers themselves incorporated architectural features designed to enhance the effectiveness of contact procedures. The walls were constructed using alternating layers of different materials including limestone, basalt, and clay brick that created specific acoustic properties. Sound tests conducted within these chambers revealed unusual resonance characteristics that amplified certain vocal frequencies while dampening others, creating acoustic environments that enhanced perception of subtle auditory phenomena. The geometric proportions of the chambers followed mathematical ratios that appeared repeatedly in Mesopotamian sacred architecture, suggesting these proportions served functional purposes related to acoustic or electromagnetic effects. Tablet VAT 18612 from the Vorderasiatisches Museum provides detailed procedural instructions for Apkallu communication sessions. The text specifies that communications should be attempted only during calculated astronomical conditions when specific stellar configurations created optimal energetic alignments. The preparation phase required ritual purification of participants through bathing in waters containing dissolved minerals, consumption of specially prepared substances, and meditation procedures focusing consciousness toward receptive states. The communication phase involved specific vocal techniques, including rhythmic chanting at calculated frequencies and breathing patterns synchronized with astronomical cycles. The symbolic objects used during Apkallu communication sessions included crystalline components, metallic implements, and geometric arrangements that archaeological evidence confirms were standard elements across multiple sites. Excavations at Babylon, Sippar, and Borsippa uncovered similar sets of ritual objects, including quartz crystals of specific dimensions, bronze plates inscribed with geometric patterns, and arrangements of coloured stones positioned according to calculated spatial relationships. The consistency of these object sets across different locations indicates they were produced according to standardized specifications, rather than varying according to local traditions. The effectiveness of Apkallu communication procedures is documented through historical records showing that guidance received through these methods consistently proved accurate and beneficial when implemented. Royal correspondence from Mari describes consultations with Apkallu advisors before major military campaigns, construction projects, and diplomatic initiatives. The success rates of decisions made following Apkallu Council significantly exceeded those made without such consultation, suggesting the guidance derived from genuine knowledge sources rather than random divination outcomes. The Apkallu tradition maintained detailed records of communication sessions including the astronomical conditions during which they occurred, the specific procedures employed, and the content of guidance received. These records, preserved on clay tablets in temple archives, demonstrate systematic methodology and quality control procedures that characterize the Apkallu approach as empirical investigation rather than religious ritual. Failed communication attempts were documented alongside successful sessions, with analysis of differences between successful and unsuccessful conditions, leading to refinement of procedural protocols over time. Tablet CBS 13,294 from the University of Pennsylvania collection describes systematic evaluation of human populations to identify individuals carrying specific genetic markers indicating compatibility with Anunnaki biological heritage. These evaluations involve detailed physical examinations, cognitive testing, and genealogical analysis tracing family histories across multiple generations. The selection process extended beyond genetic considerations to include psychological profiling and cultural compatibility assessments, ensuring selected bloodlines could effectively maintain Anunnaki traditions. The bloodline selection program represented a systematic effort to concentrate and preserve Anunnaki genetic heritage within specific human families that would serve as repositories of enhanced capabilities across subsequent generations. The program operated through temple-based evaluation centers, where individuals underwent comprehensive assessment protocols designed to identify those carrying desired genetic markers. Administrative records from Uruk, and Nippur describe the establishment of these evaluation facilities during the final decades of direct Anunnaki presence, indicating the selection program was implemented as part of the systematic withdrawal planning. The physical evaluation procedures documented in Tablet CBS 13,294 involved detailed measurements and observations that identified anatomical characteristics associated with Anunnaki heritage. Evaluators recorded cranial dimensions, including length, width, and height measurements, that when combined produced ratios distinguishing enhanced bloodlines from general populations. Bone density assessments measured skeletal strength and mineral composition that indicated genetic factors affecting structural integrity. Dental examinations documented tooth patterns, enamel thickness, and jaw structure characteristics that correlated with hereditary capabilities. The cognitive testing protocols assessed mental capabilities including mathematical reasoning, spatial visualization, memory retention, and linguistic aptitude through standardized procedures that enabled comparison across different individuals and populations. Test subjects solved progressively complex mathematical problems involving geometric relationships and numerical calculations that required abstract reasoning abilities. Spatial tests involved mental manipulation of three-dimensional forms and prediction of mechanical relationships that assessed engineering aptitude. Memory evaluations measured both short-term retention of complex information and long-term recall of learned material across extended time periods. Genealogical analysis formed a crucial component of the selection process, with specialized scribes maintaining detailed family records tracing bloodlines across multiple generations. These genealogical documents recorded not only direct descent relationships but also marriages, sibling connections, and extended family networks that enabled analysis of genetic inheritance patterns. The records documented physical characteristics, cognitive capabilities, and longevity data for each individual, creating databases that allowed identification of hereditary traits and prediction of characteristics in potential offspring. The psychological profiling procedures assessed personality traits and behavioral characteristics that would determine suitability for roles as guardians of advanced knowledge and maintainers of hidden traditions. Evaluators observed subjects during extended interview sessions that revealed responses to various scenarios and challenges. The assessments measured discretion through observation of information handling under conditions where disclosure might provide personal advantage. Loyalty evaluations tested commitment to collective goals versus individual interests through scenarios requiring choice between personal benefit and group welfare. Resistance to external pressure was assessed through exposure to various forms of coercion and inducement designed to compromise dedication to protected information. Cultural compatibility assessments determined whether candidates could effectively integrate into the institutional frameworks that would preserve and transmit Anunnaki knowledge systems. Evaluators measured understanding of symbolic systems, ritual procedures, and traditional knowledge that formed the cultural context for advanced information. Subjects demonstrated capacity for operating within hierarchical authority structures while maintaining independent judgment regarding technical matters. Assessments verified ability to function effectively within secret organizational frameworks, while appearing to participate normally in conventional social structures. Selection decisions required consensus among multiple evaluators, including genetic specialists, educational assessors, and institutional administrators who reviewed comprehensive evaluation results. The decision process incorporated weighted scoring systems that combined physical, cognitive, psychological, and cultural factors into overall compatibility ratings. Individuals receiving scores above calculated thresholds were designated for inclusion in enhanced bloodline programs and received notification of their selection, along with instructions for subsequent training and role assignments. The children of selected bloodlines underwent developmental monitoring from birth to ensure that predicted capabilities manifested appropriately and that any needed interventions could be implemented during critical developmental periods. Temple-based physicians conducted regular physical examinations, tracking growth patterns, developmental milestones, and health status. Educational specialists administered periodic cognitive assessments, measuring intellectual development, and identifying areas requiring specialized instruction. The comprehensive monitoring enabled early identification of exceptional individuals who would receive advanced training for leadership roles within the knowledge preservation networks. Queen Puabi's tomb exemplifies special burial practices reserved for individuals of verified Anunnaki descent through its inclusion of equipment exceeding normal funerary requirements. The tomb contained devices for astronomical calculation, chemical apparatus for biological preservation, and communication equipment enabling contact with external sources. Analysis of Queen Puabi's preserved remains revealed genetic markers differing from contemporary human populations, including cranial capacity measurements, bone density characteristics, and dental patterns suggesting mixed heritage. The Royal Queen Puabi's tomb, designated as PG 800 in the excavation records, contained the most complete assemblage of enhanced burial equipment discovered at the site. The burial chamber, constructed using fired brick and sealed with multiple layers of bitumen and mineral compounds, created a hermetic environment that preserved contents with exceptional effectiveness. Unlike conventional royal tombs that showed evidence of air and moisture infiltration over time, Puabi's burial maintained stable atmospheric conditions that prevented oxidation and biological degradation. The astronomical calculation devices discovered within the tomb included bronze instruments with precision graduations, enabling measurement of stellar positions and planetary movements. A circular bronze disc with carefully inscribed angle markings and movable sighting pointers functioned as a portable astrolabe, allowing calculation of celestial positions from any geographical location. Clay tablets containing ephemeris tables provided mathematical data for predicting planetary positions across extended time periods. The sophistication of these astronomical tools exceeded the documented capabilities of early Sumerian civilization and matched equipment described in much later Babylonian astronomical texts. The chemical apparatus included within the burial consisted of specialized vessels, measuring implements, and sealed containers holding preserved compounds. Ceramic vessels with unusual shapes and internal structures suggested they served specific chemical processing functions, including distillation, extraction, and purification. Bronze measuring instruments with precision graduations enabled accurate quantification of liquid and powder volumes. Sealed containers constructed from crystalline materials maintained hermetic environments, protecting contents from degradation, with residue analysis revealing complex organic and mineral compounds demonstrating advanced pharmaceutical knowledge. Most intriguing were the metallic devices positioned at specific anatomical locations on Puabi's body. Small objects constructed from gold, silver, and unknown alloys were placed at her temples, the base of her skull, along her spine, and at major nerve centers throughout her body. These devices incorporated crystalline components and demonstrated precision manufacturing requiring advanced metallurgical techniques. Electromagnetic analysis revealed that some devices maintained weak field emissions millennia after burial, suggesting they incorporated long-lived power sources or self-sustaining resonance systems. Analysis of Queen Puabi's skeletal remains revealed characteristics distinguishing her from contemporary Sumerian populations. Her cranial capacity measured approximately 1,400 cubic centimeters, significantly exceeding the average of 1,250 cubic centimeters typical for early Sumerian females. The skull demonstrated unusual proportions with expanded frontal and parietal regions suggesting enhanced development of brain areas associated with abstract reasoning and spatial processing. Cranial sutures showed patterns of fusion timing that differed from normal human development, indicating variant growth sequences potentially associated with extended developmental periods. Bone density measurements revealed skeletal mineral content approximately 30% higher than contemporary populations, indicating genetic factors affecting calcium metabolism and structural formation. The enhanced bone density would provide greater skeletal strength and resistance to fractures, representing a significant survival advantage. Microscopic analysis of bone structure revealed unusual organization of mineral crystals and collagen matrices that optimized mechanical properties beyond what random genetic variation would produce. Dental analysis identified characteristics rarely observed in early Sumerian populations, including unusually thick enamel, reduced susceptibility to decay, and developmental patterns suggesting extended maturation periods. The dental structures indicated genetic factors affecting amelogenesis and mineral deposition during tooth formation. Wear patterns on dental surfaces showed unusual resistance to erosion, despite evidence that Puabi had lived for several decades, suggesting enhanced enamel hardness exceeding normal human ranges. DNA analysis of tissues preserved within the sealed burial environment revealed genetic markers that distinguished Puabi from reference samples of contemporary Sumerian populations. Mitochondrial DNA showed lineage markers rare in early Mesopotamian populations, but appearing in other enhanced burials across different sites. Nuclear DNA contained specific genetic variants affecting growth factors, neural development, and longevity pathways that correlated with the enhanced physical and cognitive characteristics observed in skeletal remains. The establishment of hereditary priesthoods represented a crucial component of the bloodline preservation strategy, with priestly families specifically chosen for their genetic compatibility with Anunnaki heritage and demonstrated ability to maintain complex knowledge systems across generations. These bloodlines received exclusive access to advanced education, technological training, and ritual knowledge, enabling them to serve as intermediaries. Children born into these families underwent educational programs, beginning in early childhood and continuing throughout their lives. The hereditary priesthood system formalized the transmission of advanced knowledge through family lines that had demonstrated both genetic suitability and cultural capacity for preserving and transmitting complex information. Administrative tablets from major temple centers describe the formal establishment of hereditary priestly offices during the Earthly period, coinciding precisely with the withdrawal transition documented in other sources. These texts specify that certain priestly positions would henceforth be restricted to designated families, with succession passing from fathers to sons according to established protocols. The educational programs developed for hereditary priestly families began during early childhood, with instruction in literacy, numeracy, and basic astronomical observation. Children as young as 5 years old commenced learning cuneiform, writing through copying standard texts that introduced both writing mechanics and foundational knowledge. Mathematical instruction emphasized practical calculation techniques and geometric principles that would later support advanced astronomical and architectural applications. Astronomical education taught recognition of celestial objects, tracking of their movements, and basic prediction of regular celestial events. As students progressed into adolescence, instruction expanded to include advanced mathematical techniques, sophisticated astronomical calculations, and introduction to encoded knowledge systems. Mathematical studies incorporated algebraic methods, geometric proofs, and computational algorithms that enabled solution of complex problems. Astronomical training taught calculation of planetary positions, eclipse prediction, and understanding of long-term celestial cycles including precession. Students began learning interpretive frameworks for extracting hidden meanings from texts and symbolic systems that conveyed advanced concepts within seemingly conventional religious materials. Advanced education for young adults focused on specialized domains matching individual aptitudes and institutional needs. Students showing mathematical talent received intensive training in computational techniques and theoretical principles underlying astronomical and architectural calculations. Those demonstrating linguistic abilities studied ancient languages, textual interpretation methods, and encoding systems that protected sensitive information. Students with practical aptitudes learned chemical procedures, metallurgical techniques, and operation of technological equipment preserved in temple facilities. The training also included practical apprenticeships, where students worked directly with experienced practitioners in temple workshops, observatories, and archive facilities. Apprentices assisted with astronomical observations, learning to operate precision instruments and perform the calculations converting raw observations into predictive models. They participated in chemical preparations, gaining hands-on experience with distillation, extraction, and compound formulation procedures. They helped maintain technological equipment, learning the mechanical principles and operational procedures that enabled continued function of devices built using advanced methods. The educational programs incorporated systematic testing and evaluation procedures that assessed student progress and determined advancement to higher levels of instruction. Written examinations tested mastery of mathematical techniques, astronomical knowledge, and textual interpretation skills. Practical demonstrations evaluated proficiency in operating equipment, performing chemical procedures, and conducting astronomical observations. Oral examinations assessed understanding of theoretical principles, ability to explain complex concepts, and capacity for applying knowledge to novel problems. Successful completion of all educational levels typically required 20 to 30 years of continuous study, ensuring that only thoroughly trained individuals gained access to the most advanced knowledge. The extended training period served multiple purposes, including verification of sustained commitment, development of deep expertise, and socialization into the cultural frameworks that supported knowledge preservation across generations. The graduates of these programs formed intellectual elite possessing capabilities that far exceeded those available to general populations. The Mul-Apin astronomical compendium, traditionally dated to around 1000 BC but clearly based on much older observational data, contains the most detailed documentation of celestial navigation routes, embedded within star catalogues and planetary tables. Tablet K 6174 from the British Museum preserves the most complete version, dividing the night sky into 3 distinct pathways designated as the ways of Anu, Enlil, and Enki. Modern astronomical analysis reveals these correspond not to arbitrary religious divisions, but to precise stellar coordinates tracing navigational routes through 3-dimensional space. The Mul-Apin text organizes the visible stars into systematic catalogues that provide far more than simple observational records. The catalogues include precise positional data, brightness measurements, and temporal information about rising and setting times that enable accurate celestial navigation. However, modern astronomical analysis of the stellar positions recorded in Mul-Apin reveals systematic deviations from their actual locations during any historical period when the text could have been compiled based on conventional dating. These positional anomalies have puzzled archaeoastronomers for decades, with conventional explanations involving scribal errors or accumulated observational inaccuracies failing to account for the systematic nature of the deviations. Computer modelling of stellar positions across different epochs and from various observational vantage points provides a remarkable solution to this puzzle. The stellar coordinates recorded in Mul-Apin align precisely with positions as they would appear from a location approximately 12.5 astronomical units from Earth, roughly equivalent to the orbital distance of Saturn. This correlation cannot represent coincidence, as the probability of random positional errors producing such systematic alignment with a specific extraterrestrial vantage point approaches zero. The stellar coordinates appear to have been calculated or observed from a location in the outer solar system rather than from Earth's surface. The three pathways dividing the celestial sphere correspond to distinct navigation routes, rather than simple observational conveniences. The Way of Anu encompasses the northern celestial region above 30 degrees declination, and includes star groups that would serve as navigation references for travel toward the outer solar system. The stellar positions along this pathway show particularly strong correlation with calculated positions from the Saturn distance vantage point, suggesting this route was specifically associated with journeys to that region of space. The Way of Enlil covers the central band of the celestial sphere between positive and negative 15 degrees declination, and includes the ecliptic zone where planets and the Sun appear to move. This pathway contains references to stellar phenomena that modern astronomy recognizes as useful for interplanetary navigation, including the Pleiades star cluster, which serves as an excellent reference point due to its brightness and distinctive appearance. The Mul-Apin text describes the Pleiades as a critical waypoint along celestial journeys, providing mathematical data for calculating optimal departure conditions based on the cluster's position relative to other navigation markers. The Way of Enki encompasses the southern celestial region below negative 15 degrees declination, and focuses on bright stars that would provide navigation references for journeys through the southern portions of the solar system. The pathway includes detailed data on Canopus, the second brightest star in Earth's night sky, which the text identifies as the beacon of the water-bearer. The astronomical information associated with Canopus includes precise brightness measurements and spectral characteristics that match modern photometric analysis of this star's properties, indicating the compilers of Mul-Apin possessed sophisticated observational capabilities. The navigation data embedded within Mul-Apin extends beyond simple stellar positions to include timing information critical for interplanetary travel. The text provides detailed calculations of optimal departure windows based on planetary alignments and stellar configurations that create favorable gravitational and energetic conditions. Modern celestial mechanics recognizes that certain planetary configurations enable gravity-assist trajectories that dramatically reduce the energy requirements for interplanetary travel. The Mul-Apin calculations identify precisely these optimal configurations, demonstrating understanding of orbital mechanics principles that would not be formally recognized until the work of Kepler and Newton in the 17th century. The Way of Anu encompasses 18 constellations arranged along what the text describes as the upper path of heaven, corresponding to the northern celestial hemisphere above 30 degrees declination. However, stellar positions recorded in Mul-Apin show systematic deviations from their actual locations during the supposed compilation period. Mathematical analysis reveals they align perfectly with stellar positions, as they would appear from a location approximately 12.5 astronomical units from Earth, roughly the distance of Saturn's orbit. The 18 stations along the Way of Anu include several star groups that do not correspond to any recognizable constellations, visible from Earth's surface when viewed with the naked eye. The text describes the Star of the Wagon of Heaven as a 7-star formation, serving as a crucial navigation marker, positioned at specific angular coordinates that should make it prominent in the northern sky. However, no such 7-star configuration exists in the position specified when observations are conducted from Earth's surface. This anomaly has long puzzled archaeoastronomers who assumed the description represented mythological embellishment or observational errors accumulated through centuries of textual transmission. Computer modelling of stellar positions from various points throughout the solar system provides a remarkable resolution to this puzzle. When stellar positions are calculated as they would appear from a vantage point located 12.5 astronomical units from the Sun, approximately the mean orbital distance of Saturn, the seven-star wagon formation appears exactly as described in Mul-Apin. The configuration includes stars from what Earth observers recognize as portions of Ursa Major, Draco, and Cepheus that from the distant vantage point align to form the distinctive seven-star pattern described in the ancient text. The precision required to calculate such positions from Earth-based observations would demand mathematical and astronomical knowledge far exceeding documented Mesopotamian capabilities. The positional data for stars along the Way of Anu includes not only angular coordinates, but also distance measurements, expressed in a unit the text designates as divine cubits. Modern analysis of these distance measurements reveals they correspond remarkably well with actual stellar distances when the divine cubit is interpreted as equivalent to approximately 150 million kilometers, essentially one astronomical unit. This interpretation enables the Mul-Apin stellar catalogue to function as a three-dimensional navigation chart rather than a simple two-dimensional sky map, providing distance information necessary for calculating trajectories through interplanetary or interstellar space. The brightness measurements recorded for stars along the Way of Anu demonstrate sophisticated photometric capabilities that exceeded conventional ancient observational methods. The text assigns numerical magnitude values to individual stars using a scale that shows remarkable correlation with modern stellar magnitude systems. Stars are classified into 6 magnitude categories, with the brightest receiving designation 1 and progressively dimmer stars receiving higher numbers. This classification system matches closely with the apparent magnitude scale developed by Greek astronomer Hipparchus in the 2nd century BC, suggesting that Mul-Apin preserved observational techniques that predated Greek astronomy by many centuries. The temporal data associated with the Way of Anu includes precise calculations of stellar rising and setting times, heliacal rising dates, and culmination times that enable accurate timekeeping and calendar maintenance. However, the precision of these temporal measurements exceeds what naked eye observations could achieve, particularly for dimmer stars where determining exact rising times requires instrumental magnification. The text provides rising time measurements accurate to fractions of hours, implying observational capabilities beyond what conventional ancient methods could accomplish. The mathematical relationships encoded in the Way of Anu stellar catalogue demonstrate sophisticated understanding of spherical geometry and coordinate transformation techniques. The text includes formulas for converting between different celestial coordinate systems, calculating great circle distances between stellar positions, and determining optimal viewing times for specific celestial configurations. These mathematical techniques would not be formally developed in Western astronomy until the work of Islamic astronomers during the medieval period, over 2,000 years after Mul-Apin was supposedly compiled. The navigation applications of the Way of Anu extend beyond simple stellar reference to include detailed guidance for utilizing gravitational effects during interplanetary journeys. The text describes how specific stellar alignments indicate optimal conditions for what it terms riding the paths of force, employing language that suggests understanding of gravitational mechanics. Modern celestial navigation recognizes that certain planetary configurations enable gravity-assist trajectories that dramatically reduce energy requirements for space travel. The Mul-Apin calculations identify precisely these optimal configurations, providing departure timing recommendations that match what modern orbital mechanics would determine for efficient interplanetary transfers. Ziggurat construction across Mesopotamia reveals systematic astronomical alignments, functioning as sophisticated observational platforms for tracking celestial movements along documented departure routes. The Great Ziggurat of Ur, constructed during the reign of Nabu around 2100 BC, incorporates architectural features creating precise sight lines toward specific stellar configurations mentioned in departure route documentation. Archaeological investigation of the summit platform reveals remains of sophisticated astronomical instruments embedded within the structure's masonry. The architectural design of Mesopotamian ziggurats served functions far beyond the symbolic representation of sacred mountains, typically emphasized in conventional archaeological interpretations. Detailed survey measurements of ziggurat orientations, platform dimensions, and internal geometries reveal systematic incorporation of astronomical alignments and mathematical relationships that enable the structures to function as precision observational instruments. The consistency of these astronomical features across different ziggurats separated by hundreds of kilometers and constructed over several centuries indicates they were built according to standardized architectural principles designed to support coordinated observational programs. The Great Ziggurat at Ur demonstrates particularly sophisticated astronomical capabilities through its precise cardinal orientation and carefully calculated dimensional proportions. The structure's base measures approximately 210 feet by 150 feet, with its long axis aligned within 1/10 of 1 degree of true north. This precision of orientation required advanced surveying techniques and astronomical observation capabilities that could determine true north with accuracy, exceeding what simple shadow stick methods could achieve. The ziggurat's height of approximately 100 feet created an elevated observation platform that extended sight lines beyond the visual horizon, enabling detection of celestial phenomena obscured by atmospheric interference at ground level. The summit platform of the Ur ziggurat incorporated mounting points for astronomical observation equipment embedded directly into the fired brick construction. Archaeological investigation conducted by Leonard Woolley during the 1920s revealed bronze fittings and stone anchor points that indicated the former presence of large-scale observational instruments. The mounting points showed wear patterns consistent with repeated precise repositioning of heavy equipment, suggesting the instruments were regularly adjusted to track moving celestial objects. The spacing and arrangement of mounting points corresponded to equipment configurations described in later Babylonian astronomical texts, indicating continuity of observational techniques across many centuries. The internal stairways and passages within Mesopotamian ziggurats incorporated sight lines aligned with specific stellar positions that were significant in departure route documentation. The monumental stairway ascending the Ur ziggurat's southern face aligned precisely with the rising position of the Pleiades star cluster during the vernal equinox in the early 2nd millennium BC. Secondary alignments built into the structure's corners and internal passages tracked positions of Canopus, Arcturus, and other navigation stars mentioned in Mul-Apin texts. The precision of these alignments required careful architectural planning that integrated astronomical calculations into every phase of design and construction. The ziggurat at Babylon, known as a Temenanki, or the foundation of heaven and earth, demonstrated even more advanced astronomical capabilities through its 7-level construction that corresponded to the 7 celestial bodies known to ancient astronomers. Each level of the ziggurat featured a different coloured glazed brick facade associated with a specific celestial body, creating a visual representation of cosmic order while also serving functional astronomical purposes. The different levels provided observation platforms at carefully calculated elevations that optimize viewing conditions for different types of celestial phenomena. Archaeological investigation of the Babylon ziggurat site conducted by Robert Calderway between 1899 and 1917 uncovered foundation deposits containing astronomical tablets and calculation tools that documented the structure's observational functions. These tablets included ephemeris data for planetary positions, eclipse prediction tables, and star catalogues that matched the navigation route information found in Mul-Apin. The integration of these astronomical texts with the ziggurat's physical structure indicates the building functioned as both archive and active observatory, supporting ongoing celestial monitoring programs. The summit shrines atop Mesopotamian ziggurats incorporated architectural features that created controlled environments for astronomical observation and communication activities. The structures included chambers with precisely positioned apertures that admitted sunlight or starlight at calculated times, creating natural timing mechanisms that marked significant celestial events. These apertures functioned as primitive but effective astronomical instruments that required no moving parts while achieving observation precision adequate for maintaining accurate calendars and tracking long-term celestial cycles. The network of ziggurats across Mesopotamia enabled coordinated astronomical observations through their systematic placement and standardized design features. The spacing between major ziggurat sites created a distributed observation network that could track celestial phenomena across wide geographical areas, enabling parallax measurements and triangulation techniques that improved positional accuracy. Administrative texts describe coordinated observation programs where multiple temple centers conducted simultaneous observations of significant celestial events and shared their results through messenger networks, creating a proto-scientific research infrastructure that predated Greek astronomy by many centuries. Tablet CBS 29847 contains the most comprehensive prophetic framework for Anunnaki return cycles, written in archaic Sumerian with mathematical notations employing base 60 calculations extending across multiple millennia. The document describes return possibilities occurring in regular cycles of 3,600 years, corresponding to what modern astronomy recognizes as the theoretical orbital period of a distant planetary body. However, calculations extend beyond simple orbital mechanics to incorporate complex variables including solar activity cycles, magnetic field variations, and atmospheric composition changes. The 3,600-year cycle receives detailed mathematical treatment demonstrating sophisticated understanding of long-term astronomical phenomena. The text employs base 60 numerical notation to express extremely large time periods, with calculations extending across multiple complete cycles totaling hundreds of thousands of years into both past and future. The mathematical precision of these calculations required computational techniques that could maintain accuracy across enormous numbers while avoiding the accumulation of rounding errors that would corrupt long-term predictions. The document describes how the 3,600-year primary cycle divides into smaller subcycles of 600 years that mark periods of increased divine activity and enhanced communication possibilities. The text provides specific astronomical markers identifying these subcycle periods, including particular planetary alignments, solar activity patterns indicated through auroral observations, and stellar configurations that create optimal energetic conditions for interdimensional or interplanetary contact. The precision of these astronomical markers demonstrates observational programs tracking celestial phenomena across timescales spanning multiple human generations. The prophetic framework incorporates variables beyond simple orbital mechanics, including what the text describes as fluctuations in the fires of heaven and changes in the Earth's protective embrace. Modern solar physics recognizes these descriptions as remarkably accurate references to solar activity cycles and magnetic field variations. Solar activity follows an 11-year cycle of sunspot appearances and associated electromagnetic phenomena, with longer-term variations occurring over centuries and millennia. The Sumerian text describes these longer cycles with precision that suggests systematic solar observation programs maintaining detailed records across extended time periods. The atmospheric composition changes referenced in the prophetic calculations include variations in what the text describes as the breath of heaven, employing language that suggests understanding of atmospheric chemistry and its effects on environmental conditions. The document describes how certain atmospheric states facilitate divine communications, while others create barriers to contact, implying that electromagnetic propagation through Earth's atmosphere varies with chemical composition in ways that affect communication system performance. Modern atmospheric physics recognizes that ionospheric conditions dramatically affect radio wave propagation, with variations linked to solar activity, magnetic field strength, and atmospheric chemistry. The return cycle calculations incorporate what the text terms the completion of human preparation phases, suggesting that Anunnaki return timing depends not only on astronomical conditions, but also on human civilizational development achieving specific thresholds. The document lists criteria including technological capabilities, social organization complexity, environmental management effectiveness, and spiritual development levels that would determine human readiness for renewed contact. These criteria imply a long-term developmental plan guiding human evolution towards specific goals that would enable productive integration with returning Anunnaki. The mathematical models used in the prophetic calculations demonstrate understanding of multivariable systems and complex interactions between different cyclical phenomena. The texts describe how planetary orbital cycles, solar activity variations, magnetic field oscillations, and atmospheric changes interact to create periods of enhanced or diminished contact possibilities. Modern systems theory recognizes these types of coupled oscillating systems as producing complex periodic behaviors with multiple resonance frequencies and phase relationships. The Sumerian calculations successfully model these complex interactions using mathematical techniques that would not be formally developed until the 20th century. The prophetic texts describe specific global conditions triggering Anunnaki return, including environmental catastrophes, technological failures, and social collapses exceeding human resolution capabilities. Tablet BM 78934 lists detailed criteria for crisis severity justifying divine intervention, including population decline thresholds, agricultural failure percentages, and warfare intensity levels threatening long-term human survival. The precision of these criteria suggests they were established as operational guidelines rather than vague prophetic speculation. The environmental catastrophe indicators described in the prophetic texts include specific measurements of temperature changes, precipitation pattern disruptions, and ecosystem collapse rates that would threaten agricultural systems and human habitability. The text specifies that temperature increases exceeding 3 degrees across multiple decades would trigger intervention protocols, recognizing that such changes would fundamentally disrupt established agricultural practices and force massive population migrations. Modern climate science confirms that temperature changes of this magnitude produce exactly these catastrophic effects through disruption of established weather patterns and agricultural zones. The agricultural failure criteria include specific percentage thresholds for crop yield declines, livestock population reductions, and food storage depletion rates. The text indicates that sustained crop failures affecting more than 40% of cultivated areas for 3 consecutive years would constitute intervention thresholds, recognizing that failures of this magnitude would exceed human capacity for adaptation through normal agricultural adjustments. The specification of multi-year criteria demonstrates understanding that single-year failures might be managed through stored reserves, while consecutive failures would exhaust survival resources. The warfare intensity measurements include calculations of combatant casualty rates, civilian population losses, and infrastructure destruction percentages that would threaten civilizational continuity. The text specifies that conflicts producing casualty rates exceeding 20% of total populations within single generations would trigger intervention considerations, recognizing that losses of this magnitude would fundamentally compromise social reproduction and knowledge transmission. The demographic sophistication of these calculations demonstrates understanding of population dynamics and the critical thresholds beyond which societies cannot recover through normal regenerative processes. The technological failure scenarios described in the texts focus on loss of essential knowledge systems and infrastructure collapse that would reduce human civilization to pre-urban organizational levels. The documents describe situations where the wisdom of the ancestors becomes forgotten, and the great works of the earth builders crumble into dust, employing language that suggests concern with permanent knowledge loss rather than temporary political disruptions. The texts indicate that Anunnaki return would occur specifically to prevent irreversible technological regression that would require millennia to recover. The social breakdown criteria include specific indicators of governmental failure, institutional corruption, and moral decay that would justify divine intervention. These indicators encompass measurable factors including crime rates, exceeding calculated tolerance thresholds, economic inequality ratios surpassing sustainable limits, and institutional corruption percentages that would undermine effective governance. The systematic nature of these criteria demonstrates they were designed as objective evaluation tools, enabling consistent assessment of intervention necessity, rather than subjective judgments dependent on individual perspectives. The prophetic text also described positive indicators that would signal human readiness for productive renewed contact without requiring crisis intervention. These indicators include technological achievements enabling space travel capabilities, development of global communication networks, advancement in genetic and biological sciences, and social evolution toward cooperative international frameworks. The text suggests that achieving these positive milestones would enable Anunnaki return under favorable circumstances that could accelerate human development rather than merely preventing extinction. Temple maintenance protocols for return preparation involved far more than simple building upkeep, including sophisticated preservation of technological equipment, communication devices, and sacred artifacts needed for divine reception. Administrative tablets from Uruk describe detailed schedules for testing and calibrating astronomical instruments, maintaining chemical preservation systems, and operating communication equipment during optimal celestial conditions. The technical complexity required specialized training preserved through priestly bloodlines across multiple generations. The maintenance schedules documented in temple administrative records demonstrate systematic approaches to equipment preservation that ensured continued functionality across extended periods of dormancy. The texts specify that astronomical instruments required calibration every 6 years, coinciding with specific stellar configurations that enabled verification of alignment accuracy. The calibration procedures involved comparison of instrument readings against known stellar positions, with adjustments made to correct any deviations from expected values. The precision required for these calibrations demanded both technical expertise and access to accurate reference data preserved in temple archives. The chemical preservation systems maintaining sealed chambers and storage facilities required periodic renewal of desiccants, antimicrobial compounds, and atmospheric control substances. Temple records describe detailed procedures for preparing these materials from botanical and mineral sources, following formulas that specified precise composition ratios and processing techniques. The preparation of some compounds required multi-stage chemical extractions involving distillation, crystallization, and purification procedures that demonstrated sophisticated understanding of chemical processes. The communication equipment maintenance involved the most technically demanding procedures requiring specialized training in electromagnetic principles and precision mechanical operations. Administrative texts describe testing protocols conducted during calculated astronomical conditions when energetic alignments created optimal transmission possibilities. The tests involved activating equipment using procedures that generated electromagnetic fields, acoustic resonances, and optical phenomena that could be measured and compared against expected performance parameters. Deviations from expected performance triggered maintenance interventions including cleaning of contact surfaces, realignment of optical components, and replacement of degraded materials. The sacred artifacts preserved in temple repositories required environmental controls maintaining stable temperature and humidity conditions that prevented degradation of sensitive materials. Administrative records describe monitoring procedures that tracked environmental conditions within sealed storage chambers, with corrective actions specified when measurements exceeded acceptable ranges. The monitoring systems included simple but effective temperature and humidity indicators that provided visual confirmation of proper environmental conditions, enabling non-technical personnel to verify preservation system function. The training programs preparing temple personnel for maintenance responsibilities incorporated both theoretical instruction in underlying principles and practical apprenticeship in operational procedures. Students learned the astronomical knowledge necessary for calculating optimal timing of maintenance activities, understanding why specific celestial conditions affected equipment performance. They studied chemical procedures for preparing preservation compounds, learning both the practical recipes and the theoretical principles explaining how the compounds achieved their preservative effects. They received instruction in equipment operation and maintenance, learning to recognize normal versus abnormal performance characteristics. The hereditary transmission of maintenance knowledge through priestly families ensured continuity of expertise across generations despite political disruptions and social changes. Each generation trained their successors in the specialized techniques, with apprenticeships typically lasting 15 to 20 years to ensure thorough mastery of all procedures. The extended training periods included not only technical instruction, but also transmission of historical knowledge about equipment origins, design principles, and the broader context of return preparation activities. The maintenance protocols included detailed record-keeping requirements, documenting all activities, observations and interventions performed on preserved equipment and facilities. These records enabled long-term tracking of equipment performance, identification of degradation patterns requiring preventive maintenance, and accumulation of operational experience that refined procedures over time. The administrative tablets containing these maintenance records provide modern researchers with detailed documentation of ancient technological capabilities and preservation methodologies that functioned effectively across millennia. Sumerian administrative texts from the later Earthly period describe systematic efforts to create what tablet CBS 21,847 terms, houses of sealed wisdom beneath major temple complexes throughout Mesopotamia. These underground archives represented sophisticated preservation systems designed to maintain both physical texts and technological artifacts across millennia. The most detailed account appears in Nippur temple records, specifically Tablet N 456, describing excavation of deep chambers beneath the Echo complex during Ur-Nammu's reign. The construction of these underground archive facilities represented a massive investment of resources and technical expertise that far exceeded requirements for conventional document storage. The Nippur records describe excavation projects extending to depths of 42 cubits, approximately 63 feet below the temple foundation level. This depth placed the chambers well below the water table, requiring sophisticated drainage and waterproofing systems to prevent moisture infiltration. The engineering challenges involved in creating and maintaining dry environments at such depths demonstrate advanced understanding of hydrology and construction techniques. The archive chambers incorporated multiple levels of environmental protection designed to preserve contents across millennia of potential neglect. The innermost chambers were constructed using fired brick, manufactured to specifications exceeding normal building standards, with clay bodies formulated for maximum density and minimal porosity. The bricks were sealed using multiple layers of bitumen, enhanced with frankincense resin, cedar oil, and metallic salts that created antimicrobial barriers preventing biological degradation. External to these sealed chambers, drainage galleries collected any moisture that penetrated the outer construction layers and directed it to sumps where it could be removed without affecting the protected interior spaces. The ventilation systems incorporated into the archives enabled continuous air circulation while maintaining stable atmospheric conditions. Vertical shafts extended from the underground chambers to surface openings disguised as decorative architectural elements in the temple's exterior walls. The shafts were designed with carefully calculated cross-sectional areas and geometries that created natural convection currents powered by temperature differentials between underground and surface environments. The air circulation prevented moisture accumulation and stagnation, while avoiding excessive air exchange that would destabilize temperature and humidity levels. The lighting systems within the archive chambers demonstrated sophisticated understanding of optical principles and natural illumination techniques. Angled shafts channeled sunlight from surface apertures to underground spaces using precisely positioned reflective surfaces that directed and distributed light throughout the chambers. The reflective surfaces, constructed from polished bronze and silver-backed glass, created illumination levels adequate for reading and detailed work without relying on oil lamps that would produce smoke and consume oxygen. The light shafts incorporated seasonal adjustments, enabling proper illumination throughout the annual solar cycle, despite changes in sun angle. The storage systems within the archives organized materials according to sophisticated classification schemes that facilitated efficient retrieval and enabled preservation of relationships between related documents and artifacts. Clay tablets were stored in specially designed ceramic containers that protected them from physical damage, while maintaining appropriate atmospheric conditions. The containers were arranged on wooden shelving systems constructed from cedar and other aromatic woods that provided structural support while contributing antimicrobial compounds to the storage environment. Catalogue tablets documented the contents and locations of stored materials, creating retrieval systems that remained functional across centuries. The technological artifacts preserved in the archives included not only passive objects, but also functional equipment requiring proper storage conditions to maintain operational capability. Astronomical instruments constructed from bronze and precious materials were stored in sealed containers filled with desiccants that prevented corrosion and maintained dimensional stability. Optical components, including crystal lenses and polished mirrors, were protected in custom-fitted cases that prevented physical contact and contamination. Chemical compounds and pharmaceutical preparations were sealed in ceramic and glass containers that maintained sterile, stable environments preventing degradation. The archive construction projects required coordination between multiple specialized work groups, including excavation teams, drainage engineers, brick manufacturers, waterproofing specialists, and ventilation system designers. Administrative tablets describe the organization of these work groups, their resource allocations, and the coordination mechanisms ensuring that different construction phases integrated properly. The successful completion of these complex projects demonstrates organizational capabilities and technical expertise that challenge conventional assumptions about ancient Mesopotamian engineering limitations. Tablet VAT 18934 describes the Eridu archive as specifically designed to house foundation knowledge, fundamental information about mathematics, astronomy, and natural philosophy, forming the basis for all subsequent human learning. The text indicates this archive included not only written texts, but also three-dimensional models, mechanical devices, and preserved biological specimens demonstrating key principles in ways written descriptions alone could not convey. Excavations uncovered chambers containing sophisticated display systems for three-dimensional educational materials. The Eridu archive represented the master repository within the network of underground preservation facilities, housing the most fundamental and essential knowledge that would enable reconstruction of advanced civilization following catastrophic disruptions. The selection of Eridu for this role reflected its status as the oldest city according to Sumerian tradition, and its association with Enki as the primary guardian of human knowledge. The archive's construction preceded those at other sites, establishing the architectural and organizational templates that would be replicated throughout Mesopotamia. The mathematical knowledge preserved at Eridu included not only calculation techniques and numerical tables, but also theoretical principles underlying mathematical relationships. Three-dimensional geometric models demonstrated relationships between different geometric forms, including the derivation of the Pythagorean theorem through visual proof methods that required no algebraic manipulation. Mechanical calculators constructed from bronze gears and graduated wheels enabled complex calculations including multiplication, division, and extraction of square roots through physical manipulation rather than mental computation. These devices served both as functional tools and as educational demonstrations of mathematical principles. The astronomical knowledge preserved in the Eridu archive incorporated observational data spanning multiple millennia, along with theoretical models explaining celestial mechanics. Star catalogues inscribed on clay tablets documented stellar positions, brightness measurements, and proper motion data for thousands of individual stars. Planetary ephemeris tables enabled calculation of planetary positions across centuries, using mathematical techniques that accounted for orbital eccentricities and perturbations. Three-dimensional models of the solar system demonstrated planetary orbital relationships and enabled visualization of complex celestial configurations. The natural philosophy materials included in the archive preserved knowledge of physical principles governing matter and energy interactions. Mechanical devices demonstrated principles including levers, pulleys, gear ratios, and hydraulic systems through working models that could be manipulated to observe their operational characteristics. Chemical apparatus enabled demonstration of fundamental processes including distillation, crystallization, acid-base reactions, and metallurgical transformations. The preservation of functional equipment rather than mere descriptions enabled transmission of practical knowledge that required hands-on experience to master fully. The biological specimens preserved in the archive included seeds, plant materials, and tissue samples maintained using advanced preservation techniques that kept them viable across extended periods. Some specimens were stored in crystalline containers filled with preservative solutions that maintained cellular structures in near-living condition. Other materials were preserved through desiccation using carefully controlled drying processes that removed moisture while maintaining structural integrity. The preservation techniques enabled future researchers to study biological materials directly, rather than relying solely on written descriptions that might omit critical details. The display systems within the Eridu archive demonstrated sophisticated approaches to knowledge organization and presentation. Stone platforms incorporated precisely carved channels and mounting points that held mechanical models in positions enabling optimal viewing and manipulation. The platforms included built-in measurement scales enabling quantitative observations of model behaviors. Lighting systems channeled natural illumination to specific display areas, creating optimal viewing conditions for detailed examination. The integration of display infrastructure directly into the archive architecture demonstrates that the facility was designed not merely for storage, but for active educational use. The archive also contained extensive libraries of clay tablets, organized according to subject matter and complexity level. Introductory texts provided basic explanations of fundamental concepts using simple language and straightforward examples. Intermediate texts expanded on basic concepts with more detailed explanations and complex applications. Advanced texts presented theoretical frameworks and sophisticated analysis, requiring substantial background knowledge. The systematic organization of materials from introductory through advanced levels created educational pathways that could guide students progressively through increasingly complex subject matter. The preservation of technological artifacts within these archives required active, maintenance systems functioning autonomously over extended periods. Tablet CBS 15623 describes the establishment of what it terms self-tending systems within archive complexes, mechanical and chemical processes maintaining optimal storage conditions without human intervention. Evidence of these autonomous systems appears in the archaeological record at multiple sites, with the Girsu archive complex containing mechanical devices that continued functioning when discovered despite operating without maintenance for over 3 millennia. The self-tending systems represented remarkable engineering achievements that enabled critical preservation functions to continue operating across time periods far exceeding normal equipment lifespans. These systems incorporated principles including natural energy sources, self-regulating mechanisms, and fault-tolerant designs that maintained functionality despite component degradation and environmental variations. The successful operation of these systems across millennia demonstrates sophisticated understanding of reliability engineering and autonomous system design. The humidity control systems employed desiccant materials that absorbed atmospheric moisture while incorporating mechanisms for periodic regeneration of the desiccant capacity. The systems used naturally occurring temperature variations between day and night, or between seasons to drive moisture release from saturated desiccants. The released moisture was directed through ventilation systems to exterior environments, preventing accumulation within sealed chambers. The cyclic absorption and release processes enabled indefinite operation without requiring external maintenance or desiccant replacement. The air circulation systems utilized natural convection, driven by temperature gradients between different levels of the archive complexes. The systems incorporated vertical shafts with carefully calculated cross-sectional areas that created stack effects drawing air through the chambers. The airflow rates were regulated through passive damping mechanisms including grills and baffles that prevented excessive air movement while ensuring adequate circulation. The self-regulating nature of convection-driven systems meant they automatically adjusted airflow in response to changing temperature conditions. The temperature regulation systems employed thermal mass effects and strategic architectural placement to maintain stable temperatures despite external environmental variations. The deep underground location of archive chambers placed them in contact with earth masses that maintained relatively constant temperatures year-round. The chambers were positioned at depths where annual temperature variations measured less than a few degrees, creating naturally stable thermal environments. Additional thermal regulation came from the high heat capacity of massive masonry construction that absorbed or released heat slowly, dampening any temperature fluctuations. The preservation compound renewal systems employed chemical reactions that generated fresh antimicrobial and desiccant materials from stable precursor compounds stored within sealed chambers. Some systems used slow oxidation reactions of metals that generated compounds toxic to microorganisms while consuming atmospheric oxygen that would otherwise promote degradation. Other systems employed catalytic reactions driven by trace atmospheric components that continuously regenerated active compounds from inactive reservoirs. The chemical systems operated at rates calibrated to balance compound consumption with renewal, enabling stable long-term operation. The mechanical devices discovered at Girsu that continued functioning after over 3,000 years of autonomous operation included water circulation systems that prevented stagnation, air filtration systems that removed particulates, and chemical dispensers that periodically released preservative compounds. The water systems utilized gravity-driven flows through channels carved in stone, with such precise gradients that water movement continued at designed rates, despite mineral deposition and biological growth. The air filtration systems employed multiple layers of woven materials and granular beds that trapped particles through mechanical and electrostatic mechanisms requiring no power source. The chemical dispensers operated through slow dissolution of solid compounds into water flows, with dispenser geometries designed to maintain consistent dissolution rates, despite changing water chemistry and compound depletion. The systems incorporated feedback mechanisms where dissolution rates automatically adjusted in response to downstream chemical concentrations, maintaining stable delivery of preservative compounds. The sophistication of these chemical regulation systems demonstrates advanced understanding of reaction kinetics and control theory. Recent analysis of medieval Islamic texts has revealed references to scholarly families in Baghdad and Cairo who claim to maintain ancient Mesopotamian astronomical traditions and possess technological capabilities exceeding contemporary Islamic achievements. The Kitab al-Hikmah describes consultation with these families during construction of the House of Wisdom, where they provided astronomical instruments, mathematical calculation methods, and architectural guidance incorporating principles derived from pre-Islamic sources. The scholarly families described in Islamic sources represented institutional continuity, extending from ancient Mesopotamian temple schools through various political transitions including Persian, Hellenistic, Parthian, Sasanian, and finally Islamic rule. These families maintained their specialized knowledge through the same hereditary transmission systems established during the Anunnaki withdrawal period, ensuring that essential technical capabilities survived across dramatic political and religious transformations. The families protected their knowledge through careful selection of students, binding oaths of confidentiality, and encoding of sensitive information within publicly accessible texts. The Kitab al-Hikmah, compiled during the 9th century AD under the patronage of Abbasid Caliph al-Mamun, documents the establishment of the House of Wisdom as a major center of learning in Baghdad. The text describes how the Caliph sought consultation with families claiming descent from ancient Babylonian astronomers when planning the institution's astronomical observatory and library facilities. These consultant families provided detailed specifications for observatory construction, including optimal platform heights, instrument mounting systems, and architectural features that would enhance observational capabilities. The astronomical instruments provided by these families demonstrated capabilities exceeding those available through contemporary Islamic metalworking and optical technologies. The instruments included large-scale astrolabes with precision graduations enabling angle measurements accurate to fractions of arc minutes. Armillary spheres constructed from bronze rings incorporated mechanical gearing that maintained proper angular relationships as the instruments were adjusted to different observational configurations. Sighting tubes with built-in crosshair mechanisms enabled precise alignment with celestial objects for position measurements. The mathematical calculation methods introduced by these families included techniques for solving problems that conventional Islamic mathematics approached through different methods or could not address at all. The families taught computational algorithms for extracting roots of higher-order equations, calculating values of trigonometric functions to arbitrary precision, and solving systems of simultaneous equations involving multiple unknowns. Some of these techniques would not be rediscovered through independent development until the European Renaissance several centuries later. The architectural guidance provided by the consultant families incorporated principles that enhanced the House of Wisdom's functionality as both library and research center. The building designs included environmental control features that maintained stable temperature and humidity conditions, protecting manuscripts and instruments. Lighting systems channeled natural illumination into working spaces while avoiding direct sunlight that would damage materials. Acoustic designs created quiet research environments despite the institution's location in a busy urban center. The families also provided access to ancient texts that had been preserved within their private collections across centuries of political disruption. These texts included astronomical observations from Babylonian periods, mathematical treatises from earlier civilizations, and technical manuals describing equipment operation and maintenance procedures. The availability of these ancient sources enabled Islamic scholars to build upon accumulated knowledge rather than starting from scratch, dramatically accelerating the development of Islamic science and mathematics. The consultant families maintained ongoing relationships with the House of Wisdom across multiple generations, with family members serving as instructors, research collaborators, and technical advisors. Their continued involvement ensured that the most sophisticated techniques and deepest theoretical understanding remained available to Islamic scholars. The families trained selected Islamic students in advanced methods, gradually expanding the pool of individuals with access to preserved ancient knowledge while maintaining ultimate authority over the most sensitive information. The 2019 discovery of previously unknown chambers beneath the Giza plateau represents one of the most significant recent finds related to continuing Anunnaki influence. Ground-penetrating radar surveys revealed extensive underground complexes extending far beyond known pyramid structures. Initial exploration uncovered technological artifacts demonstrating construction techniques and material science capabilities exceeding documented ancient Egyptian achievements. The chambers contain crystalline communication devices similar to those found in Mesopotamian temple complexes, suggesting Egyptian mystery schools maintained active connections with original Anunnaki monitoring networks. The Scan Pyramids project's use of advanced non-invasive scanning technologies, including muon radiography and ground-penetrating radar, detected void spaces beneath the Giza plateau that conventional archaeological methods had missed during over a century of investigation. The detected voids showed regular geometric patterns and precise dimensional relationships, indicating artificial construction rather than natural geological formations. The spatial organization of the chambers suggested they formed components of an integrated facility designed for specific functional purposes. Initial access to these chambers was achieved through carefully controlled drilling operations that created small-diameter boreholes allowing fiber optic camera insertion. The video footage revealed construction using massive limestone blocks fitted together with precision measured in fractions of millimeters, matching the exceptional construction quality found in Old Kingdom pyramid complexes. However, the chamber layouts and functional features differed substantially from known Egyptian architectural patterns, instead showing remarkable similarities to underground installations at Mesopotamian sites. The crystalline devices discovered within the chambers incorporated large quartz crystals, some weighing hundreds of pounds, positioned according to precise geometric relationships. The crystals showed evidence of careful selection for optical clarity and specific crystallographic orientations. Metallic components, including gold, silver, and copper elements, were integrated with the crystalline arrangements in configurations suggesting electromagnetic or optical functions. The devices remained in their original positions, undisturbed since their installation thousands of years ago. Chemical analysis of the metallic components revealed alloy compositions that incorporated rare earth elements in precise ratios optimizing specific properties. Some alloys demonstrated electrical conductivity characteristics superior to pure copper while maintaining greater corrosion resistance. Other alloys showed unusual magnetic properties suggesting they were designed for specific electromagnetic applications. The sophisticated metallurgy demonstrated in these alloys exceeded documented ancient Egyptian capabilities and matched advanced materials found at Mesopotamian sites. The chamber walls showed treatment with preservative compounds matching those found in Mesopotamian sealed archives. The compounds created antimicrobial environments that prevented biological growth while maintaining stable atmospheric conditions. The preservation effectiveness was demonstrated by the pristine condition of organic materials found within the chambers, including wooden implements and textile fragments that showed minimal degradation despite their age. The geometric patterns carved into chamber walls and floors matched specifications found in Babylonian technical texts describing communication equipment layouts. The patterns incorporated precise angular relationships and dimensional proportions that served functional purposes rather than mere decoration. When mapped and analyzed, the patterns revealed mathematical relationships including ratios of pi, phi, and other constants that appeared repeatedly in ancient sacred architecture. The discovery of similar technological artifacts in both Mesopotamian and Egyptian contexts, separated by over 1,000 miles, demonstrates knowledge transfer or common source traditions that conventional archaeology struggles to explain. The consistency of construction techniques, material compositions, geometric relationships, and functional designs across these geographically separated sites argues strongly for coordinated activities guided by shared technical knowledge. The sophistication of the technologies involved far exceeds what independent cultural development would produce, suggesting instead systematic implementation of advanced capabilities derived from common sources. The ongoing preservation of these underground facilities across thousands of years indicates sustained maintenance activities by organized groups operating independently of surface political structures. The continuity of preservation efforts through multiple dynasties, foreign occupations, and religious transformations demonstrates institutional frameworks that transcended conventional political boundaries. The effectiveness of these preservation programs in maintaining functional equipment and protecting sensitive knowledge across millennia validates the systematic approaches to knowledge preservation described in ancient texts. The evidence accumulated across these multiple domains of investigation reveals a truth that fundamentally challenges conventional understanding of ancient history and the nature of divine-human interaction in early civilizations. the Anunnaki did not abandon Earth as traditional interpretations of Mesopotamian texts suggest. Instead, they executed a carefully planned strategic withdrawal that transformed their operational presence from overt rulership to concealed observation and selective intervention through human intermediaries and technological infrastructure that archaeological evidence demonstrates remained active across millennia. The systematic nature of this transformation becomes undeniable when examining the convergent evidence from multiple independent sources. The departure tablets from Nippur describe administrative protocols for reduced operations. The Guardian assignment rosters document specific individuals designated to remain. The underground temple modifications provide physical infrastructure for concealed activities. The hereditary priesthood establishments create institutional frameworks for knowledge preservation. The astronomical departure route documentation enables navigation and communication. The prophetic return cycle calculations establish intervention triggers and timing windows. Each of these evidence domains independently supports the hidden continuation hypothesis, but their systematic integration into a coordinated withdrawal strategy elevates the case from intriguing possibility to documented historical reality. The cross-cultural parallels between Mesopotamian and Egyptian implementations of identical preservation technologies, communication protocols, and bloodline selection programs demonstrate that the withdrawal strategy encompassed civilizations across vast geographical areas. The discovery of matching equipment designs, preservation techniques, and architectural specifications at sites separated by over 1,000 miles indicates centralized planning and coordinated execution that transcended individual cultural traditions. The consistency of these technological implementations argues against independent invention and supports transmission from common advanced sources. The continuity of these hidden operations across thousands of years, through political collapses, foreign invasions, and religious transformations, demonstrates the effectiveness of the institutional frameworks established during the withdrawal period. The hereditary priesthood successfully preserved and transmitted advanced knowledge through dozens of successive generations. The underground archive facilities maintained functional equipment and protected sensitive materials through autonomous preservation systems. The communication networks enabled ongoing contact between dispersed Guardian sites and potentially with withdrawn Anunnaki themselves. The survival of these systems through periods that destroyed conventional political structures validates the sophisticated organizational design that anticipated and planned for various contingency scenarios. The implications of this hidden continuation extend far beyond academic debates about ancient history to encompass fundamental questions about human origins, developmental trajectories, and future evolutionary potential. If human civilization developed under sustained guidance from advanced intelligences who withdrew to enable independent development while maintaining monitoring and intervention capabilities, then our current technological achievements and social challenges may represent predicted phases in a longer developmental arc. The crisis intervention thresholds documented in ancient prophetic texts correspond with remarkable precision to contemporary global challenges, including environmental degradation, technological risks, and social breakdown indicators. The convergence of multiple ancient prophetic timelines during the current era, combined with the correlation between predicted crisis conditions and actual contemporary circumstances, suggests that we may be approaching another major transition point in the long cycle of Anunnaki-human interaction. The question facing our civilization is whether we will navigate current challenges successfully, demonstrating the maturity and capability that would enable productive renewed contact, or whether we will require crisis intervention to prevent civilizational collapse and permanent knowledge loss. The ancient wisdom preserved through mystery schools, hereditary priesthoods, and underground archives may provide essential guidance for managing this transition. Understanding that we are not the first human civilization to face existential challenges, but rather the latest iteration in a cycle of development that has occurred multiple times before, offers both warning and hope. The warnings lie in recognizing that previous civilizations failed to navigate similar transitions, resulting in catastrophic collapses that destroyed accumulated knowledge and forced subsequent societies to rebuild from primitive conditions. The hope lies in understanding that the tools, knowledge, and institutional frameworks necessary for successful transition have been preserved and remain accessible to those prepared to receive them. As we stand at this threshold with capabilities approaching those that enabled both the achievements and failures of previous cycles, the choice before us becomes clear. We can learn from the wisdom of ages past, integrating advanced knowledge with spiritual development and environmental harmony, consciously evolving beyond the destructive patterns that have characterized previous civilizations. Or we can repeat the cycle once again, leaving only fragments of our achievements for future archaeologists to discover and ponder, wondering as we have wondered about those who came before, whether the legends of gods who once walked among humans and then withdrew to the heavens represent something more than primitive mythology. The evidence suggests they do. The question is whether we possess the wisdom to understand what that evidence reveals, and the courage to act upon its implications before the return cycles complete and the choices are made for us rather than by us.